morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. My name is Ayuba Ilia. Thank you for joining us on this show. We'll bring you all the perspectives to all the issues of national concern here in our country. And I usually don't do that alone, and I have my co-anchor in the studio. Good morning, Stella.
Good morning, and it is a delight to be here. I'm always delighted to be here. I hope our viewers are delighted to be joining us this morning as well. Good morning, my name is Stella Iyaji. Thank you for joining us.
All right, well, quite a lot seems to be happening lately, and one that is worrisome for me is the fact that these days people take laws into their hands, you know, and you see killing of people recklessly. This morning I'm seeing a story about a prison warder who killed a trader over cigarette.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Like, I'm wondering that you have a gun doesn't mean that you just
pull it out and you use it because, you know. And in any case, the man, he's selling his commodity. He has a right over that commodity. So if he doesn't want to sell to you, it is right?
Exactly.
So I was surprised when I saw that.
It's really surprising. And don't forget that this is just coming just after we heard that there was also someone that was engaged in an argument in Lagos.
In Lagos, over change and something like that.
And then the person was mobbed and then burnt again. So, like, I'm wondering, it's very important that our security agencies up their game. To make sure that, you know, jungle justice does not prevail.
Yes,
and also, there's a danger to that.
And also, just because you're carrying arm, in fact, once you're armed, it puts extra responsibility on you to be more careful. The prison staff ought to have been more careful, because the fact that he had a gun with him didn't mean that he should use it, you know, just, you know.
Exactly. So, well, there are rules of engagement,
of course,
for every security official that owns a gun, that has a gun.
Definitely.
And also caution to also, you know, other civilians as well, because I've seen several times where civilians try to actually engage, you know, in a squabble with a security official who is carrying a gun.
Yeah, you know, I have it as a principle. I don't argue with anyone who is armed. Like when I'm driving and I see police operatives, I start slowing down even before I get to them, because they are the ones that are armed at that point.
Exactly.
So you could tell a story later. People could say, oh, sorry, it happened. It has happened. So it's important to be careful.
And also don't forget that the law empowers them to actually shoot in self-defense.
Of course.
If they are faced with danger, you know, in the face of danger. So in this particular instance, well, I do not know, I wasn't there, but from what we are seeing, it doesn't look like there was any danger to anyone. So,
well, I just hope that the matter will be properly investigated, and, you know, and the law runs its course at the end of the day. Yeah.
I agree. Well, let's take a look at more stories. Let's start with the headlines today, this morning. Kidnappers gun down 6 Kano residents, abduct village head.
Prepare for flight cancellations. Airline operators alert Nigerians.
Blasphemy. Suspect arrested over Deborah's death, remanded in prison.
Now let's take the news in details. Gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have killed 6 persons in a village in Takai local government area of Kano State. Takai local government in Kano South is about 80 kilometers from Kano metropolis, and it shares a border with several towns of Jigawa State. The gunmen were said to have raided Karfi village in the local government and abducted the 53-year-old village head, Abduyaya Ilo. They were said to have stormed the village on 3 motorcycles from Bauchi State through Ringim Forest in Jigawa. The attackers were already on the way out of the village after abducting the traditional ruler, when the villagers mobilized the vigilante groups and youth to track them down. The gunmen were said to have turned back and opened fire on the trailing groups, shooting 9 of them, out of which 6 persons have so far been confirmed dead, while 3 others are said to be responding to treatment. Confirming the incident, the spokesman of the police in Kano, SP Abdullahi Haruna Kiyawa, said a team of operatives has been dispatched to the local government with the goal of rescuing the abducted village head and arresting the suspects.
The Airline Operators of Nigeria has alerted Nigerians to an imminent disruption in flight operations as the scarcity of aviation fuel, popularly known as Jet A1, worsens. The spokesperson for the association, Obiora Okoko, in a statement on Monday, said that the fuel scarcity was affecting smooth operations of air transport operations, adding that it will lead to flight rescheduling and cancellations. Okonko, however, said that the association and its members were working tirelessly in alliance with product marketers, government, and relevant stakeholders to ensure availability and proper pricing of aviation fuel in the country. He added that while pleading the understanding of the flying public in the face of this reality, we also promise to do all that is necessary and within our powers to restore normal flight schedules as soon as possible, quote and unquote.
Now, the police have arraigned 2 suspects in connection with the murder of 200-level students of Shehu Shagari College of Education, Sokoto, Deborah Samuel, who was accused of blasphemy. The suspects, Biliaminu Aliyu and Aminu Hunkuchi, who are also students of the college, were arraigned before a magistrate's court in the state on Monday. According to the police first information report, the suspects were arraigned as a result of the mob action which led to the lynching of the student. After the suspect pleaded not guilty to the charges, the police prosecutor, Inspector Khalil Musa, urged the court for another date to enable the police complete their investigation. However, the defense counsel, led by Professor Mansour Ibrahim, who did not oppose the application, pleaded with the court to grant the defendant's bail, citing sections 157, 161 and 164 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of Sokoto State, as well as Sections 36, subsection 5 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. The court, however, adjourned ruling on the application to a later date, which will be communicated to the lawyers. It therefore directed the defendants to be remanded at the Sokoto Correctional Center.
All right, that's that for the news highlights. We'll take a look at some more this time around, looking at a political story. As primaries of political parties draw closer, presidential aspirants have continued to solicit the support and votes of delegates from Kaduna State. The latest is the immediate past Transport Minister Rotimi Amechi. We gathered he turned in his resignation later Monday afternoon. Fatima Saleh-Laden will give us more details on this.
As primaries of political parties draw closer, presidential aspirants have continued to solicit the support and votes of delegates from Kaduna State. The latest is the immediate past Transport Minister Rotimi Amechi, we gathered turned in his resignation later Monday afternoon. Amechi said, as the youngest and the most experienced among the party's presidential aspirants, he is more qualified for the job than others.
I may be 56, one of the youngest aspirants, but I'm the most experienced. Most experienced, governed a state that had insecurity like Kaduna. I don't know how many of you remember those days that you can't visit Port Harcourt. All of you were scared of coming to Port Harcourt because of the level of insecurity. So I have had experience of governing a state where there was insecurity.
The ex-minister also responded to questions on the Kaduna-Abuja train attack, with about 62 passengers still in captivity.
I joined every person in cabinet to own up to the fact that we may have failed. But we did our best as a government to ensure that lives and property on the road were saved. We did our best. So those who have been kidnapped, the federal government is doing quite a lot to get them released. But security is not discussed in the public glare. Security is done privately and quietly until these people are released. You may not hear much. I join those parents who are not happy to request that they be calm until the government is able to get those people who are in captivity released.
From the opposition, the People's Democratic Party, one of the contenders, Peter Obi, whose campaign train was in Kaduna, says the current administration has failed the country through mismanagement of resources, adding that it is time to turn the country from a consumption to production economy.
The money we borrowed and consumed or thrown away If we are taking just 10% of it, 5% of it and thrown to the textile industry, Nigeria would have been a different place. We can earn more money from exporting textiles and garments than we earn from oil. Oil is just giving us $15 billion. So we can do more. All you need to do is to remove Nigeria from consumption to production.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has set June 3rd as the deadline for the conduct of party primaries in the country. Fatima Salaladen, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
Well, quite interesting to see some of the presidential aspirants in Kaduna. I mean, many of them have been traveling around the country.
Ayuba, the best position to be at this point is to be a delegate, because you just sit where you are. These people keep coming to you. You know. I mean, yes, this is a time to feel very important.
Yeah, because I mean, and I believe that they're not coming empty-handed.
Yeah, of course, they're not coming empty-handed. The only thing is that we just hope that these delegates think about the country at the end of the day, because it's whoever the delegates push forward that Nigerians should vote for. You know, at the end of the day, Nigerians will be left with an option of whoever the delegates of these parties elect as their candidates.
And it's very important what politicians promise people around this period of time. Sometimes, you know, we hear all manner of promises.
I hope they are jotting it down so that they will even remember when they come.
Exactly. That's one aspect that I think that we as citizens need to do better in terms of holding people to account. Because sometimes they just say things and they feel like, well, they're going to forget after all.
Let me just say it and pass. When we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. Let me just say this for now.
One of the major issues that Nigeria is dealing with right now is the issue of insecurity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for some of them who have been part of the government, you know, I don't know what they are going to tell people or tell Nigerians.
Well, they may say that they were not at the helm. They were part of the government. So now when they are at the helm, they will change things. I think that's their argument. Not that I'm holding brief for them, but I'm thinking that may be their argument.
Well, I mean, you being part of the government, you definitely have a jurisdiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for some of them within their jurisdiction,
under their watch, certain things have happened.
You know,
yes. And we haven't seen a corresponding response to that thing that has happened.
Exactly.
Yet they want a bigger office. Yeah,
exactly.
We've seen that.
So we'll leave Nigerians to do the final.
But at this point, the major work is on the delegates. The delegates owe Nigerians a duty to just ensure that they put money aside, they put personal interest aside, and ensure that whoever their party is going to push forward will be somebody, you know, that will do the work.
Sure. All right, well, that's quite an interesting one. We'll continue to keep tab on all the developments as regards that. Now, let's take a look at another story.
And now, this story here is security. The FCT Police Command has arrested 3 suspects in connection with the murder of one Turungwa Stephanie, a 26-year-old corps member deployed to City Homes Estate, Lokogoma in Abuja. Stephanie, who reportedly left home on April 14 in her NYC uniform, was declared missing and later found dead on April 27th. The arrest was made following the deployment of tactical and intelligence assets at the command's disposal, attached to the Homicide Department of the State Criminal Investigation Department. The suspects were paraded at the FCT Police Command in Abuja. Trust TV's Mardia Umar reports.
At a press briefing, the FCT Police Commissioner, Babaji Sanda, stated that the trial of Jennifer Sembe, a 26-year-old lady, Mondi Simon, a.k.a. Black, and Solomon Abu, both male, aged 36 and 35, all residents of Maitama area of FCT, confessed to the crime.
Discreet and painstaking investigation by tactical and intelligence assets of the command attached to the homicide section of the State Criminal Investigation Department, State CID, led to the arrest of 3 suspects, all residents of Oguta Lake, Maitama area of the FCT, who criminally conspired and murdered the victim to separate her from Edward Achadu, so that Jennifer Sembe, one of the suspects, an estranged lover of Edward, could have him all to herself, especially for pecuniary benefits.
The suspects speak on the involvement in the alleged murder of the core member.
My own work day is to just tie the gear and go. Then as I tie the gear with my friend Jaru, where he's not here. So as we touch her, we just go and leave her with the Jennifer in the house. So our plan is, she said that she will give us 100,000 when she get the money from her boyfriend. Their boyfriend will give her, she collect money. So I don't really know how much is that. I don't know how much she's going to collect, but in our discussion is she will give us 100,000.
She lured the girl. I don't know how she managed to get the number of the girl. She called the girl. She promised to give the girl a phone, according to her. So on that fateful day, on a Thursday like that, I was in the office when she called me that I should please come so that I will help open gate when the girl comes. And I foolishly accepted to come open the gate. So I came. When I came and I met this guy and one other guy there with her. I said, what's happened? She said she wants them to scare her when she comes so that she will not make noise, so that she will get information from the girl and then later call Edward, their boyfriend that they are dragging, to collect ransom.
Today's briefing is targeted at reaffirming the commitment of the command to the fight against crime and criminality in the territory as a way of encouraging the good people of the territory not to relent in cooperating with the police.
He said the suspect will be charged to court upon the conclusion of the investigation.
Ayuba, that's another sad one. The girl was sent to Abuja to serve, and then the next thing is her cops.
Exactly,
you know.
And it's quite horrible, really, what people do
Yes.
these days.
And sometimes the reason,
it's unbelievable.
you just wonder what's happening to humanity, because the reasons, not that there's any reason to kill anyone, but the reasons, when the reasons become so, I don't know.
It just means that, life is
Losing its
continually
meaning,
losing its value
like,
in the country.
and then Nigerians are becoming more, should I say, heartless?
Maybe numb. Maybe becoming numb to the issues. Maybe becoming unbothered.
Because these days you hear
lukewarm.
that someone has been killed. Look at this girl.
It does. That's the thing. When the unusual become usual,
Yeah.
Gradually it begins to, somehow enter into the psyche of people, and people do not feel
I hope we
anything.
take a break back before it gets worse than this, right?
I hope so.
As a society.
I hope so, because
Yes.
trust me, it could happen to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone, just anyone could be the victim of all of these. And so it's very important that as a society we rise up to all of these things. Now, that's that for some of the stories that we have this morning. We'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at stories on the front pages of our newspapers this morning. Please stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust Television. We'll take a look at the newspapers this morning and have a sense of what the stories are like here. Now, we begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and the lead story is a political story. The 2023 presidency, it says, push for northern candidacy heightens in APC. It has a writer that says promoters prisoners of power. That's according to Tinubu's camp. We will lose if South is schemed out, according to Ali Ndume. Also, we have inside the game plan. That's one of the aspects of the story. And then it will create political problem, not disintegration. Professor Fage, you'd find all the details on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, the pictorial shows you men of the Federal Road Safety Corps helping truck driver in Jabi to push his vehicle. You could say that, well, quite patriotic and quite
interesting as well.
Yeah, consider, you know.
We would like to see more of this, you know.
Yes, you know, it's not enough to sanction people on the roads, you know, as officials, you know, responsible for the safety of our roads. But also it's important to recognize when some of these challenges happen. And when you have vehicles, you cannot rule out having, you know, problems,
you know,
mechanical problems with our vehicles.
There's a need for this civil operatives relationship to grow. You understand? Like, when you see road safety operatives do stuff like this, when they now stop you because you have violated one of the rules, it's a good thing.
Yes.
Because they're there for you when you are in trouble, and then of course, you know, they're there to also do their job.
It's important to respect them too,
of course,
because they are there in the interest of the members of the public as a whole. So it's quite a commendable one. All right, we'll see that below that. You'll see a story there that says EFCC arrests Accountant General Idris over 80 billion naira fraud. He's accused of money laundering and misappropriation of government funds.
Diversion of
funds. Those were
through bogus consultancies and all of that.
But consultancy fees and the rest. And
the allegation says,
contracts,
yes.
From what the story is saying, that he is accused of issuing contracts to, you know, family and friends, you know, and so it's quite disheartening when you see some of these things.
Yes, I'm sure as the days unfold, there will be more information on all of that.
Yes. All right. So, you know, but you know, this is really a thing of concern, because in many government parastatals, government agencies and the rest of them, one of the practices is to, some of the officials, some of them actually issue contracts themselves using fictitious, you know, companies, you know, using. And
in some instances, you'd find out that those contracts are never executed at the end of the day.
And then there's no follow-up.
There's no follow-up, nothing.
The person that is supposed to do the follow-up is the one that actually issued the contract. So it's important that the EFCC go after.
Yes. And in this instance, this is really, really big because that's the Accountant General, and that's the Accountant General of the Federation. He has, Mr. Ahmed Idris has held that position since 2015.
True. So
yeah, so I'm sure a lot of Nigerians are watching out to see how this unfolds and where it leads to at the end of the day.
And I hope that it's not going to end up, on the front pages of our newspapers.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to.
And I hope that their investigations, whatever they find, is made public, and, if there are other people involved, I hope they're able to get them as well.
Sure. All right. All right, we'll now take a look at some more stories. At the very bottom there, you'd see Ganduje reconciles with Barrow, shelves senatorial bid. And that story is on page 10.
Ayuba, the political terrain in Kano is getting more and more interesting daily. Yes, I was actually expecting this because with the number of defections happening in the APC, a lot of people moving from the APC to the new bride, the NNPP. I knew that it was, because Barrow wants to go back to the Senate, and Ganduje also wants the same seat, right? So if he didn't do this, who knows, maybe Barrow would have been the next person on the move to the NNPP.
I can't say, but I mean, one must also recognize how strategic the Kano politics is to the northwestern part of the country. And so if this begins to happen in Kano, well, we are not sure what is now going to happen when you have the likes of Kwankwaso, who is very influential politician.
An experienced one at that.
State. Yeah. So we continue to follow up on that and see.
In fact, in the past couple of days, there have been reports of major defections that are waiting to happen in Kano.
Including the chief of staff.
That one shocked me when I heard about it. I mean, do you know what happens when you're sitting down and you hear that your chief of staff has defected? It can't get any worse. I mean, that's like the closest person to you,
True. Well, we'll
see. Even as at yesterday, there were reports that a major political figure was going to defect to the NNPP from Kano State. That didn't happen, and we're watching to see what happens. I'm sure last-minute negotiations and all of that may still be going on, but...
All right, let's take a look at some more. Still on the Daily Trust newspaper, below the pictorial on the very bottom, you see the stories. Another one says, bread, gas, push Nigeria's inflation to 8-month high. And then the next story, prison official kills trader over cigarette in Kano. At the very top, above the lead story, IPOB kills 2 soldiers, raises quad secretariat in Anambra. And then the next one, 4 presidential, 30 governorship aspirants pick PRP forms. So that's quite an interesting one. We'll continue to keep tab on.
I see PRP is also coming up.
At least having 4 presidential candidates
and 30 governorship aspirants, that's no joke.
It's quite an impressive one.
It's an impressive one. Although their forms are also quite cheap. I know the amount for the Senate is 1.5 million, for governorship is 2.5 million. So, if you cannot buy the ones of the 100 million, and, you may also...
We'll see. We are not here to advertise for therapy, are we? All right, now let's take a look at some other papers this morning.
Yeah, then there's the Business Day. The Business Day is talking economy. Surging wheat prices evoke ditched cassava policy. And then we have airlines face fresh fuel crisis as NNPC's supply dries up. That's basically their major headlines. As you know, the Business Day is not known to have many stories on its front page. But then, Ayuba, look at this airline thing. You remember last week when we were talking about it, when they said there was this agreement that was reached that the airlines were going to get diesel at the fuel at 480, and that was going to last for 3 months. We talked about it here that shouldn't there be a more lasting solution to this problem? And I mean, look, we're already back to this.
And who knows, maybe after that discussion, that didn't happen.
Yes, that's what they are saying. They're saying that that promise hasn't matured. They've not been able to get the product at that rate yet, and that is why. So the problem that appeared to have gone away last week is still back with us. That's what this means.
Oh, there seems to be a major problem, with the whole energy thing in Nigeria. Even for the fuel, well, we've seen that the queues, I'm talking about for the motorcycles
Petrol.
now, yes. For the queues are disappearing now.
I didn't
So,
realize.
and,
Lots of petrol stations are still not selling.
Yeah, well, but there are less queues, I think, from what I've seen around. There are less.
Well, I went to about 3 yesterday, and they were not even selling at all.
Well,
When I see queues, I feel better that, okay, at least you have and you're selling. So maybe at some point it will get to my turn. But when I drive past and I don't even see you selling, I get scared.
well,
that,
maybe
okay,
at that
so
particular time. But I've observed
that
maybe in some places.
maybe in some places.
Yes, I've observed that the queues are gradually reducing, but that's beside the point. What is important is, these bridging claims that the marketers are actually
Talking about.
Even though we've seen that the federal government has, dismissed that that claim that look, there is no such thing as 500 billion naira bridging claims, to be paid and all of that. And from what we understand, that it's meant to be a continuous process, and so we hope that with the
Whatever
new
it
changes
is.
that we are also seeing with respect to the PIA, new agency replacing the old one and all of that. I hope that will not disrupt, the supply chain as far as petroleum is concerned.
And one thing I would like is, when these things happen, it would be nice for everybody to be on the same page. It bothers me when government is saying, oh, this is the reason there's no petrol, and the marketers are saying, no, it's because you haven't paid us this amount. At that point, you're wondering what exactly is the true situation of things, right? So it would be nice if we're told the exact position of things, so that.
All right. Now let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper this morning. It also has some very interesting stories. The lead story is an investigation basically around politics. It says why Malami, Talen Silva Ngige may not return to office after resignation. You'd also find other stories below the name tag there. It says how EFCC nabbed AGF Ahmed Idris over alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Also, the next story there, Deborah, court remand suspects in prison. And then you'd also find 2023, Malagi promises to reconstruct Bida Mina Road. Now, these are some of the stories on the Blueprint, but at the very bottom there, you would see some other stories there that says Nigeria's inflation rises third consecutive time to 8-month high of 16.8. You have also terrorists kill 7, abduct monarch in Kano. Then Anambra, gunmen burn down court, local government secretariat, and kill policeman. Other stories there, guide parties on issue-based campaigns. NGE tells members. 383 visually impaired candidates sat for 2022 UTME JAM. And then the next one, 2023, my preference for Yahaya Bello over Osibanjo, Tinubu, Hafsat, Abiola. All right, that's that. And now we have, some interesting stories on that one. For me, the one about the visually impaired sitting for JAM. I believe that happened in Jos sometime last week. And it's quite an interesting one that we're having, that the agencies of state are actually recognizing
the physically challenged persons are making provisions for them.
And making provisions for them is the way to go. Because sometimes you actually look at it, it's almost as if they are schemed out of everything that is happening. I mean, for being physically challenged, let's not forget that. I mean, if they will have their way,
they wouldn't want to be in that position.
Way. So it's very important that as a society we create such avenues, we create opportunities.
That also goes for places of work. You know, there's always been that talk about places of work having facilities that will aid and that would support people that are physically challenged to be able to live normal lives and to be able to work in offices as well.
Sure. And then, of course, the inflation story. Where we
already see where we are. And so, well, with the cost of things across, I wasn't expecting anything different,
you know,
really.
I feel like it's like we make a step forward.
And then we'll go
take
back 2 steps.
And I think that that's what's happening as far as inflation
And
is
in this
concerned.
case, they said the cost of bread and gas pushed it. And the one for the gas was because of the long scarcity that we experienced. It made a lot of Nigerians to go to patronize the black marketers and thereby cost Nigerians to spend more. So, of course.
And then for the bread. Well, we know about the
Russia-Ukraine crisis.
Which a lot of experts have, confirmed that there's going to be a shortage of supply in terms of wheat, which is a major ingredient, used for the making of bread. Here in Nigeria, we do not produce as much, and so when that happens, definitely, what do you expect? There's definitely going to be an inflation.
And that takes you back to the lead story on the Business Day that says surging wheat prices evoke ditched cassava policy. You know, that's one problem we have in this country. We have policies, they come up. You remember the cassava bread thing? No, I mean, where is it at this point? I can't remember what happened to it or how it ended. Now they are saying it's evoking the ditched policy. That means we're thinking of going back to it to revive it and to see what can be done with it, right?
True. Yeah, it's always important that we...
To have backup.
Perhaps, sometimes you kind of feel like maybe some of these unfortunate things should be happening so that, once in a while, Nigeria will wake up.
But how long do we stay awake? That's another question. These unfortunate things happen. We rush to the alternative, and then immediately things appear to be getting better. We relax again and say, and then we wait again for another crisis to come.
Let's hope that this time around it's going to be for real.
Honestly. Ayipa, you see this too.
We cannot run away from the fact that we need to look at internal solutions to our problems.
Of course.
Some of these things, we can actually deal with them here, in the country without actually looking out.
We don't have to import everything. Yeah. Because anytime there's a problem there, we run into trouble. Ayipa, you see the story of abduction in Kano. That shouldn't be happening, right? Like for at least Kano is not one of the states that have been in that position up until now, and this is is dangerous.
Well, it's like if you look at the northern region, the entire region, it's almost like there's no one is a sacred cow. I mean, no one is an exception. No one is an exception to this. So we're all dealing with this same thing.
We're all together and this thing. And that is why...
And I hope that we all confront it together.
Yes, and then we'll try to, for states that are not yet under these kind of problems, we should try to keep it at bay. Like, yes, because only a couple of states are not under these attacks at the moment. So it's important to keep the problem at bay, and while we try to tackle the states that are already battling them. If not, the whole place will be overrun, and I
agree totally. All right, now let's take a look at more papers this morning.
There is the News Direct. The News Direct has the lead story, alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Reactions trail arrest of Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris. And then we have this story here that says, woman bags 12 years imprisonment for defrauding church. Osun not for sale to highest bidder. Oyetola campaign council replies Adeleke, PDP. There's also this story at the top. Lagos State government condemns Lekki lynching, calls for calm. Also, we have this story, Osun 2022, over 500 PDP loyalists defect to APC in Ayedade local government area. We also have the story here, Ipman seeks EFCC support in curbing oil theft in Niger Delta. Ayuba, woman bags 12 years imprisonment for defrauding church.
Well, the law should take its course.
And I guess the fraud is everywhere.
Of course, I believe that if we can uphold the law, then that's the only way we can get to deal with some of these things that are happening these days, so that it will serve
as a deterrent,
to others who are interested or who are intending to commit such crimes. All right. Also, other story. We are seeing that Ipman is seeking EFCC support in curbing oil theft in Niger Delta. Well, that's a genuine one. We hope that the EFCC will use all the resources at its disposal. It's very important, but
especially when viewed against the fact that we haven't been able to produce the quota that is given to us because of partly because of the oil theft in that region. Yeah.
All right, let's move on now and take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. The Nation newspaper also leads with the EFCC arrest of the federal government top accountant, talking about Idris over the 80 billion naira fraud. It says money laundering in real estate suspected. AGF faces allegation of overstaying in office. Yes. Other stories at the very top, you'd also see above the masthead, Silva telling opt not to resign. Amechi also allows Hadura quit. You also have Supreme Court to hear appeal on Section 84, subsection 12 on Thursday. Oshun voters can't be bought. Oyetola replies, Adeleke. Federal government blames tax exemption for revenue loss. You'll also see INEC gives APC, PDP, others deadlines. ASU strike. Students protest in Ondo, Oyo, and Ogun State. These are some of the stories there about the ASU strike. For me, I think that it's something that is becoming, well, it's an issue of real concern, really.
It's an issue of real concern and no end in sight. That's just the part that bothers me. It doesn't appear like there's any solution in sight anytime soon.
Well, we hope that the government do the needful as soon as possible. Let's take a look at other stories on the Punch newspaper.
The Punch newspaper has its major story. Timetable, INEC talks tough as 18 parties failed to conduct primaries. It has a rider that says, no going back on election timetable. June 3rd is deadline. INEC warns parties. APC orders intensify lobbying as commission says terminal date for primaries fixed. And then we have another story here that says dollar hits 600 naira at parallel markets. FX supply shrinks. There's this other story. Amid failed negotiation, NRC to resume Abuja-Kaduna train services. Then there's also the story that says fraud. EFCC arrest accountant general alleges 80 billion naira diversion. And then on the beneath, we have a story. ASU ex-minister fought state varsities as protest rocks Southwest and Edo State. Then there's this other story here that says Northern, Southwest, South-South presidential aspirants greedy, selfish. This is coming from Kalu. And then we have update on the Lagos lynching. Lagos lynching, engineer's widow demands justice. False ritual claim. 123 motorcycles seized. About this lead story here, INEC talks tough as 18 parties failed to conduct primaries.
Well, I hope that the political parties understands that INEC means business.
Yeah.
And, it's not going back on what the electoral
on
law
its deadline
sets out to do. And you know, when you listen to the chairman, he is actually making some very valid. He made some very valid points each time he talks about this, which is the fact that with the new electoral law, there are timelines for virtually everything.
Set for everything, and there has to be gap between a particular exercise and the next one. And so any shift will affect the next one and the entire exercise. Exactly. So it's important that they stick to the guideline that has been provided. Yes. But today is 17. The deadline is June 3rd. So let's hope that all of them conduct their primaries between now
and the implication of this will be that if political parties do not adhere, then they stand to lose out.
They stand to lose out.
Our process. And yes, they are likely to say, okay, we are going to court and all of that. Yeah.
You know, that's the part that I do not like, because they go to the court, they waste the time of the INEC and themselves, and then that will add to the amount of money spent on elections generally in the country, because as you're aware, I look at the amount that INEC has already said the election is going to cost. So any extra thing, if any party takes them to court, they have to go to court, they have to come with lawyers and all of that. So that's extra money. So the best way out is for all the parties to just stick to the rules and then conduct their primaries before that day.
All right. Also, we have the dollar hitting 600 million.
Scary one there.
Naira rather, not million.
Very scary one there.
You know, the parallel market. And with that, how do we expect to actually bring down inflation? That's one thing that I keep, pondering about. You know, if the dollar is there, up there, you know, and the naira is here, down here, how do you bring down inflation?
And for a country that is heavily import dependent, we import virtually everything that we use. And so, of course, it's going to affect everything that,
That's the point. It looks almost impossible as long as we do not stabilize
the naira.
You know, the naira, I don't know. And we can only do that when we go back to production and exports, channels of creating more dollars and bringing more dollars into the system.
Our problems are plenty, Ayuba. When we go back to production, look at the insecurity situation in the country. That is affecting production really, really badly.
And the infrastructural deficit.
Exactly.
Power,
everything.
That's why that's an issue of great concern. So
yeah, I hope all these aspirants are looking at all these problems as well, listening there. I hope they're listening that we indeed have problems that are waiting to be looked into.
Yeah, quite a lot of them really. All right, now let's take a short breather now. These are the stories that we have basically on the front pages of our newspapers. So we'll take a short breather and take a look at how Nigerians are living from day to day, try to fend for themselves and earn, legitimately. Take a look.
Sunana Ali Isa mai gari daga nan Mina, Niger State, can saka local government. Wannan kasuwanci na ne, ka gane, wanda na tashi na bude da na ga ina yi. This is our father. An haife ni 1976, September 15, da sanar Alhamis. Ba zan manta da wannan ba. Na fara primary school, na yi primary 3. Allah ta'ala ka san karatu sai da sponsoring. Wanda da ke ɗaukar nauyi na dan na tashi a hannun kakana a gurin shi da ya karatu da ya abun nan sai na dawo gurin babana. Na dawo 1989 a gane to sai muka ci gaba da wannan kasuwanci. Ina karami lokacin ni kadai ne ma karami a nan. Gaskiya Allah ta'ala bai bani ikon na yi karfi a makaranta ba, makarantar boko, amma na fi karfi a bangaren arabi. Wallahi alhamdulillah yara na ina kula da su makaranta, na ma kai su musamman private school na kai su. Saboda ina so in samu good education because na ga government school ya lalace. Ni ma kaga ba zan bari abin na baya ba. In Allah ta'ala ya sa suka tashi, amma ba zan bari su ba sai sun gama karatu. In Allah da in dare samu nake so sai kowa gama karatu ya kama kwali sai ya ce to sana'a duk wanda ya ga yana iya duba. In ya ce ga wanda ta mai sai ya ce bismillah zan ba shi taimako. Ina da mata guda 2, ina da yara guda 6. alhamdulillah kuma ta wannan sana'an ne nan Allah ta'ala rufa min asiri ni ne mai kaina auren fari babana ya biya min sadaki ya yi min duk abin da ake na lehi ka gane amma ni ne ɗauki ɗawainiyar kaina duk wani abu da ake na al'ada da sauransu ni ne mai kaina babana kuma ya yi abu da shi ma lokacin da abun nan ya yi mamaki ya yi murna ya yi farin ciki sosai ka gane so kaga alhamdulillah sana'a ta yi bisa ga wasu sana'o'i da za a ga mutum ya fara gobe a neme shi a rasa kuma duk da haka muna haƙuri da jama'a akwai wanda zai zo bai san kowa ba ya zo amma an shanu biyu ƙarshen sai ya zo an fara kwana biyu kwana uku ya ɗiba kan mutane ya gudu amma duk da haka dai muna nan muna Allah ta'ala kuma ya rufe asiri wanda kaga sabanin wani sana'a in wani sana'a kan lokaci naira 10,000 na mutum ne abin da yanzu ka kamar wannan kanina ne ka gane shi ma a da yakan je kasuwa ya so shanu guda 7 8 nashi kowane kasuwa da kuɗin kanshi to amma Allah ta'ala ya sa an samu jaraba yanzu kaga dan kai kamar tsawon wata 3 haka bai ma je kasuwar ɗauka sai dai yana ɗan sana'a yakan ɗan sai nama da sai ƙananan dabbobi ya haɗa ya je ya yi sana'a wai ba fasa za a yi ba diyan da abin ya bada wahala ka gane saboda gado ne ba fasa za a yi ba shi yasa na kana so ka yi tambaya cewa an gada lalle tabbas an gada kuma ka san aikin gado yana da wuyar jefarwa ba a jefar da shi ko ina zan je wallahi ni zan zama shugaban kasa sai na tallafa ma mahauta musamman sai na ba su personal taimako na musamman wanda ma wani ba zai zata ba Allah dan na san darajar sana'an nan ban taɓa wani sana'a ba a duniya wannan shine sana'a na ka gane na san darajar shi fiye da yadda kake zato na tashi wannan kasuwanci na tashi a ciki ka gane tun lokacin mun fara yana yanka shanu ɗaya mun zo Allah ya taimaka muna yanka 2 har ya kai 3 har ya kai 4 wani lokaci ma in aka samu kaman occasion haka muka yanka 7 8 in dai kasuwa ta bude ka gane wani lokaci muka yanka 8 7 da kuma masu zuwa suna sari masu zuwa daga cikin gari kuma suna siya da masu ɗauka ɗaya su amma yanzu halin da ake ciki kasuwa ta ɗan ƙasa na tashi a cikin wannan sana'a ka gane ko na tsinta kaina a ciki tun da nake ban taɓa wata sana'a ba sai wannan to alhamdulillah kuma na samu ci gaba a cikin sana'a ka gane amma yanzu jarabawa ta zo to kaga dan jarabawa ta zo kuma ba zan ce in fasa ba tunda ni ban iya wata sana'a ba sai wannan yanzu dai lokaci ne wanda yake Allah ya kamu kasuwa ta ɗan sanyi amma in ba haka ba da kai karan kanka in ka zo a wannan lokacin ba za mu saurari ka ba dole za mu ci ma sai dai ka ɗan je zuwa an jima karfe 4 ka zo amma kaga yanzu ba jama'a sosai na tashi a cikin wannan kasuwanci a good condition duk abokan na ka gane sai dai ni in ba wani sai dai in ba wani abinci ko riga in ba wani ko kuma in ba wani in taimaka mu ya biya kuɗin makaranta school fees da sauransu ka gane amma Allah ya rufa ma asiri a wannan kasuwanci ban taba zuwa gurin wani ilimi ba kasuwanci na kenan dimeni ba so kuma kasuwanci ne mai karfin gaske abin da ke faruwa a hali wannan sana'a dai ka gane na gaya ma asali sana'a na ne na tashi a ciki na yi aure a ciki na gina gida a ciki ina da yara ina ɗaukar ɗawainiyar makarantarsu kuma har ni in taimaka mu wani ka ga munan dukan mu yan uwan juna ne ka gane wannan baban mu ne kaga shi yanzu ya kai lokacin da shi bai sana'a yanzu so mu muke ɗaukar ɗawainiyar iyayenmu da ƙannenmu da sauran yan uwa ka gane ai ko ƙannenmu za su yi aure mu za mu ɗauki ɗawainiyar su da sauran duk abubuwan da ya kamata a yi so amma kaga yanzu yanayi ya canza kaga a da kamar shekara 2 da ya wuce idan ka zo nan irin yau akwai kasuwan ƙauye amma za ka zo ka samu shanu kamar guda wanda suka rage ba a yanka ba za ka samu kamar guda 7 ko 8 haka sun rage amma kaga yanzu da yake yanayi ya canza ba shanu sosai ana wahalan saniya matuƙa kaga yau sai in Allah ta'ala kadar an je ne za a dan samu abin da za a yanka daga nan kuma zuwa gobe ma akwai wani kasuwan za a je a samu jibi ma akwai wani kasuwan to haka dai muke bin kasuwannin in ran da aka je aka samu 4 5 a zo a aje a yanka ran da aka samu 3 ran da aka samu amma a da yake akwai su da yawa muna zaune ma za ga an kawo mana daga kauye ana kawo mana aji nan to amma kaga yanzu fulani ba su duk an kora fulani sun watsi saboda wannan matsalar to kaga dole ne abubuwa su dan canza in ba haka ba da mukan fita har Katsina za mu je mu kawo shanu mun je irin ciranci gujungu ka gane za mu je a so shanu ga kuma nan ana kawowa kuma su da aka ba su isa da yake lokacin akwai ciniki so mutane na sayan nama kaga yanzu gashi ba mutane da nan za a ga masu yanka nama nan kusan mutum 4 wannan yanka amma yanzu ina lamari ya kai mutane ba su da kuɗi su kaga alhamdulillah duk da haka ne ba fasa ba ana nana cikin rufin asirin Allah. To kaga wannan wani abu ne wanda ke inda gwamnati za ta iya tallafa ma mahauta. Amma kaga yanzu abubuwa sun kai wasu ma ba su nan sun wuce wasu ma sun canza sana'a saboda abun ya yi wuya. Ka gani kamar da shi mai gidan nan namu ka gane akwai wasu ƙannena da za a tashe su je Katsina za a ba su kamar miliyan 20 wani a bashi 30 wani ya je kudu za a bashi miliyan 10 wani zai je tun gama a bashi miliyan 15 a je a so shanu wannan ya kawo 10 wanda ya je Katsina zai kawo 25 wannan zai je kawo 10 wannan zai kawo 7 haka dai kuma a haka still za ga an kawo daga ƙauye an kawo ana soke muna siya lokacin ma in ka zo sai dai zamu abun nan a yi ciniki a siya a biya masu ci ma sukan zo su zo siya su ma a yanka musu masu biki za su zo siya a yanka musu ka gane ai to amma ka ga yanzu al'amari ga da al'amari ya zama to amma duk da haka mun gode mu Allah inda abu ne wanda yake tsakanin mu da ku za ku isar da sakon mu zuwa gwamnati sai mu ce gaskiya ya kamata gwamnati ta tallafa mahauta dan tsakanin da Allah mahauta suna cikin wani halin da ya kamata a taimaka musu duk da yake mun san ba karshen gwamnati muke muna zaman kanmu amma kuma muna karshen gwamnati da whole Najeriya ya kamata a taimaka mahauta dan gaskiya mahauta na kokari da al'umman gari da yaran gari dan wasu zaman mahauta hana su sana'an banza hana su shaye-shaye hana su ka gane dauke kayan jama'a ka gane wani zai tashi a gidansu in ya je makaranta ya dawo ya zo mahauta ya tsaya nan zai samu abinci haka zai dan samu naira 100-200 ya je ya kai maman shi aji haka za a tara mai kuɗi zai samu abin da zai sai riga wani lokacin ma an tara maman za ta dauka ta amfani da shi to tun hakan zai sa wasu yi sha'awa sai ga sun dawo suna sha'awan fawon ka gane ta ga yaro ya taso ya tashi a mahauta ya girma a mahauta kaga shi ma zai kama rashi shi yana kasuwanci ne mai kyau kasuwanci ne mai albarka kasuwanci ne mai asali mai tarihi mai dimbin tarihi na farko dai muna neman taimako wurin ubangiji duk da yake mun san jarabawa ne Allah ta'ala ya yi mana dan mun san insha Allah komai zai dawo daidai jarabawa ne wanda suka fi ma an jarabe bare mu anan muna yanka shanu wani lokaci muka yanka 30 wani lokaci muka yanka 20 yanzu ne da kasuwa ta yi sanyi muka yanka 7, 8, 10, 12 to kowace saniya ɗaya saniya na da albarka fiye da yadda kake zato kowace saniya ɗaya wallahi aka yanka ta in za a tsoma mutane da ke ci abinci a saniya ɗaya wallahi za ka yi mamaki dan kaga aka yanka saniya ɗaya wani zai ɗauki nama ɗaya cikin nama ɗaya wannan da mata biyu yana da yara a ciki ne zai samu abin da zai ce ya sutura ya yi ɗaune iyalinsa ka gane ya biya kuɗin makarantar yara a saniya ɗaya akwai masu aiki wanda suna fiɗa su ma nan daga cikinsu akwai mai mata 2 akwai mai mata 3 akwai mai mata 1 haka dai akwai wanda ba su da mata a saniya ɗaya masu aikin ta mutum 4 karanci kenan wani lokaci mutum 6-7 suna aikin saniya ɗaya kuma kowa zai samu abin da cikin ikon Allah to kaga saniya tana da albarka sosai fiye da yadda kake zato ai nan muna da yawa nan a hali yanzu da muka yi karanci mun kai kusan 350 a hali yanzu amma a da mun kai kusan 600 da wani abu a nan gurin muna da association da muke da shi a nan gurin in aka ɗauko ma list ɗin kaga sunan mutane za ka ce ba nan ba ne saboda yawan da jama'a muna da jama'a da yawa nan duk wani wanda yake na neman wani matsayi a siyasa musamman yakan taso ya zo nan ya same mu don ya sa akwai jama'a nan sosai to amma yanzu wasu duk sun wuce wasu je gona wasu kuma sun je wasu ma sun je sana'a wasu ma sun je kasuwannin ƙauye nan ka ga yau kasuwa wasu sun je kasuwannin ƙauye masu ƙananan dabbobi masu shanu duk dai sun abin nan
right, thank you for staying. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. It's top of the hour, and we'll be taking a look at our headlines again. Kidnappers gun down 6 Kano residents, abduct village head.
Prepare for flight cancellations. Airline operators alert Nigerians.
Blasphemy. Suspects arrested over Deborah's death, remanded in prison.
Now the details. Gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have killed 6 persons in a village in Takai local government area of Kano State. Takai local government in Kano South is about 80 kilometers from Kano metropolis, and it shares a border with several towns of Jigawa State. The gunmen were said to have raided Karfi village in the local government and abducted the 53-year-old village head, Abdul Yaya Ilo. They were said to have stormed the village on 3 motorcycles from Bauchi State through Ringim Forest in Jigawa. The attackers were already on their way out of the village after abducting the traditional ruler when the villagers mobilized the vigilante groups and youth to track them down. The gunmen were said to have turned back and opened fire on the trailing groups, shooting 9 of them, out of which 6 persons have so far been confirmed dead, while 3 others are said to be responding to treatment. Confirming the incident, the spokesman of the police in Kano, SP Abdullahi Haruna Kiawa, said a team of operatives has been dispatched to the local government with the goal of rescuing the abducted village head and arresting the suspects.
All right, the airline operators of Nigeria has alerted Nigerians to an imminent disruption in flight operations as the scarcity of aviation fuel, popularly known as Jet A1, worsens. The spokesperson for the association, Obiora Okonko, in a statement on Monday, said that the fuel scarcity was affecting smooth operations of air transport operations, adding that it will lead to flight rescheduling and cancellations. Okonko, however, said that the association and its members were working tirelessly in alliance with product marketers, government and relevant stakeholders to ensure availability and proper pricing of aviation fuel in the country.
The police have arraigned 2 suspects in connection with the murder of 200-level student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, Sokoto, Deborah Samuel, who was accused of blasphemy. The suspect, Biliamino Aliyu and Aminu Hunkuchi, who are also students of the college, were arraigned before a magistrate's court in the state on Monday. According to the police first information report, the suspects were arraigned as a result of the mob action which led to the lynching of the student. After the suspects pleaded not guilty to the charges, the police prosecutor, Inspector Khalil Musa, urged the court for another date to enable the police complete their investigation. However, the defense counsel, led by Professor Mansour Ibrahim, who did not oppose the application, pleaded with the court to grant the defendants bail, citing sections 157, 161, and 164 of the Administration of the Criminal Justice Law of Sokoto State, as well as section 36, subsection 5 of the 99 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended. The court, however, adjourned ruling on the application to a later date, which will be communicated to the lawyers. It therefore directed the defendants to be remanded at the Sokoto Correctional Center.
All right, that's that for the news highlights. We'll now take a look at our papers again, this time around with a guest in the studio. We have Jonathan Onoja, who joins us to give us perspectives on some of the stories on our front pages. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Yeah, good morning, my brother. It's my pleasure always.
All right, now, quite interesting stories. Let's begin with Daily Trust. Let's take a look at that. The lead story on Daily Trust newspaper this morning talks about 2023 presidency. Push for northern candidacy heightens in APC. Promoters, prisoners of power, according to Tinubu's camp. We will lose if South is schemed out, according to Leon Dume. Inside the game plan, you'd find the details on page 4. It will create political problem, not disintegration, Professor Fage says there. You also have IPOP kills 2 soldiers, raises court secretariat in Anambra. 4 presidential, 30 governorship aspirants pick PRP forms. And then below the pictorial, EFCC arrest Accountant General Idris over 80 billion naira fraud. Ganduje reconciles with Barrow, shelves senatorial bid. And then you have also bread, gas push Nigeria's inflation to 8-month high. And then prison official kills trader over cigarette in Kano. Well, these are some of the stories. Let's get perspectives. Thank you again for coming on the program.
Thank you.
The story about prison official killing a trader over cigarette in Kano. I don't know if you've seen that story anyway, and it just raises concern about how much value we place on life these days. The slightest provocation, someone is dead. So for security personnel and security official, clearly there are guidelines, there are rules of engagement when you are armed, when to use your firearm and when not to use it. Why do we see it being recklessly used in this instance, in your opinion?
It's sometimes attached to, the system. You see, when the system is failing, of course, it's not just about the papers, it is the individuals that are there. So you talk about the personnel. So how can someone just pull up a AK-47 and just shoot someone over a cigarette case? Even if the person have committed a worst offense, it does not call for such act. What you could have just simply do is to pick the person and prosecute the person. But shooting the person, I watched a video. So bad of it. And I see a young, gallant Nigerian police guy, and over a provocation of something, brought the lady out and began to shoot. Just like that. And the lady was like, you're shooting now, you're shooting. And the passengers were like, stop it, even before his superiors. So it shows it gets to show that we don't have trained personnel. What we have sometimes are just charlatans.
Do you think
that's not supposed to be in the system? Do you think
that maybe somehow some of these security personnel deal with some kind of trauma that, that requires some kind of attention?
No, I have seen that the system, the recruitment process is not well scrutinized. You still have some personnel doing drugs in the system. So sometimes their art is maybe...
Don't they go through some routine checks and all
Did you see it? Have you been to any recruitment centers where they test you whether you do drugs or not?
No, I mean those that have been recruited.
Yes.
Isn't there some routine checks?
What are the routine checks? When you still go to checkpoints and you see police officers or you still see officials still smoking and taking alcohol on duty, all in the name that they want to charge their morale. So what is the routine system? What is the routine check? That they don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't take drugs?
Based on what you know, are there like laws against these things, or it's just just like anyone else, you are free to?
Even the guard in your house, posted to you by a security company, there are laws, there are rules that you don't drink on duty, you don't smoke on duty, you don't do drugs. Those that tell you don't do on duty. But if you do it before you come to duty, it's also another problem. So you cannot take over duty under the influence of alcoholism or anything, or drugs. But you're talking about our conventional security system. There are laws, there are rules. There are rules that should guide them, there are rules that are guiding them, but they flaunt it. And the authority is not taking any action to serve as deterrent. That's why you can see have been swearing. Maybe a woman in Wuse here can just refuse to pay the normal allowance to them, and the next thing you just hear accidental discharge. So until someone is used as like a scapegoat, then others will now say yes, there's a problem. We have to take.
Okay. Do you think that there's a problem with, say, instances where you have confrontation between unarmed civilians and some of these security personnel, and some civilians can actually be very provoking. They can actually be provoking. Some go the extra mile to dare, security officials who are in their duty post, who are out there, to protect Nigerians and to do their jobs. And sometimes they're actually doing their jobs, and then you find people coming to, to dare them and all that.
He does not get to the height of pulling the trigger. It does not get to the height of pulling the trigger. You know, globally, you don't see when they're not provoking you, the best you could do. You see, like what happened in Lagos some time ago, you'll see the abuse. That is the height of professionalism. You see the abuse on the man, you see everything, you see how he was accused, you see how he was abused, rather. But he still maintained that tempo. He would have just carried the trigger and so pull, and nobody would blame him.
It takes a lot of emotional intelligence.
But that is it. Emotional
intelligence.
They lack emotional intelligence.
Yes, but do you think that maybe what they need at this point is some kind of counseling and, you know, people, maybe they need some kind of training and retraining?
You've just hit the right word. They need some kind of training and retraining.
Not just
orientation.
training.
And this time around, because of the society we find ourselves, you understand it. The police, you don't have barracks. The same people you are molesting, you still get back home and stay with them. You are not like the army. So your approach should be civil. You should have a civil approach towards issues. No matter how it is, the people you are dealing with are the same people you still get back home and meet. So you should be very careful when you are handling their cases. There could be a brother among them that will recognize you tomorrow. So what I'm trying to say is that they need this kind of, I have always advocated that the police system has to be reformed, right? But this time around, they need a specific training for their personnel.
Well, sometimes these security officials, they are also human beings, isn't it? We live in at a time when it's almost very difficult to even know, as a security official, to know who actually is your enemy. It's very difficult. Because we have enemies of state living among people these days, and so at what point would you say that you feel endangered and you feel that you are under some kind of?
There are guides there. There are guys even in their art. At what point did you use the trigger? You see, what point means that the height of it. At what point have you tolerated? What is the level of your what we call perseverance? How have you been able to bear this whole thing before you pull the trigger? Now, at what point they made it very clear there. They said, look, if your life is in danger, is your life in danger by mere saying, Oga, I'm not giving you money? Is your life in danger by just mere saying, I am not leaving? Your life is not at danger. The person you're talking to is just a helpless and unarmed person. He's not armed. So why would you just pull your trigger? If he's armed and then he wants to retaliate by telling you, I am not going. You am carrying the trigger and then you now said, come on. I now said, leave this place. You say, I'm not leaving, sir. I can't leave. And the next thing you want to do is to pull out the trigger. Then Anna said, no, I have to defend myself. But today they don't do that.
Another thing I'm thinking is it possible to say that security operatives do not leave their post of assignment with their arms? For instance, he went to buy cigarette. That would mean that he had left his post wherever it was that he was supposed to be. Did he have to go with his arm?
No. Actually, if he's on duty and within the premises or within the jurisdiction or wherever he's covering, he's supposed to go with the arms because you will not know where you meet the enemy.
Well, sometimes you see security operatives in transit, maybe with their arms. Is that okay?
Very wrong. Very wrong. In fact, that is one thing I have always said. You're not supposed to carry your arm in a public transportation or transport. It's a psychological trauma on the people. It's psychological trauma. How will you? Okay, should anything happen, what will be the judgment? What will be your take? So even when you said you are on escort duty, you are not supposed to carry arms in the same vehicle with your principals. You're supposed to take other vehicles for cover, because anything can happen. So I don't see why in this current system we see them more and more, but you wouldn't blame them. Not every person will have the money to afford one vehicle.
So, but maybe there's a need to review the law or the code of conduct, so much so that at least there's restriction on where they can go to with those arms. I think that if that is done, it's possible to reduce these accidents.
You know, the life also will be in danger if you do that. The life will be in danger. You know why?
How?
In the current situation, in the current Nigeria, a policeman living in a society, a community, because of the homegrown terror we've come to stay with, they will be the one to identify that man. The policeman don't have a barrack. If they have a barrack, this can work. But since he has no barrack, there's no barracks for them, and the conventional approach of their operation is just within the society or community. They don't go out to do anything. There's no way you can limit them to only when they're on duty to carry arms, because there are times they have to defend themselves, since they are also protecting the whole country. They have to defend themselves.
All right, well, in defending themselves, you know, clearly, like we've highlighted earlier, that there are rules of engagement and that they must exhaust all options to exercise restraint on their part and caution. Because I also recall that a few weeks ago we had an incident where a police officer was deployed to a party.
Yeah.
You know,
and after so much drunk, after so many drinks, he began to shoot the same people that brought him.
Exactly. So you know, when you hear these things, and you know, this is more like a daily occurrence. Sometimes, just that sometimes we don't get to hear, you know, about some of them, but it's like it's a consistent happening.
Okay. Still on the Daily Trust newspaper, there's this story that IPOB kills 2 soldiers, raises court secretariat in Anambra. Also yesterday, parts of Asaba was shut down because IPOB was extending its activities to that state. I mean, Asaba is in Delta, not in the not in the southeast at all. It's in the Niger Delta. Now, in your view, what can be done to handle this problem?
You see, as far as I'm concerned, IPOB is just an image painted for Nigerians to believe that it is people operating within the state. But from what I am seeing, IPOB is just a hired machinery to destabilize the Southeast.
By who?
Well, by some known actors. We've in the recent times heard about leader, one who called himself the leader. And whatever he's having with the federal government, I wish him well. You don't destroy your own house because you are looking for a national attention. It does not make any sense. Like what happened in the Northeast, it will take them years before the Northeast will come back. You talk about infrastructure, you talked about all the things that have gone wrong. They have to put those things in place. So you don't just wake up overnight and begin to destroy your own state for no just reason. There are hired machineries to destabilize the Southeast. And it is high time the governors comes together and said no to this. People that can shut down the economy, people that can shut down the activities in the state and tell you sit-at-home order when the government cannot say otherwise. Look at what happened the other day in Enugu State. They are gradually destabilizing the Southeast. And they're just going to be looking at it with the mere eyes of it is IPOB. No, it has gone beyond the case of IPOB.
You know, now, just yesterday also, we heard that there was tension in Imo State, you know, over the sit-at-home order, where there were some people who were out to enforce the sit-at-home order. But again, we are also seeing that there seems to be some kind of contradiction. The spokesman of the group would later release a statement, will say that, well, IPOB is now responsible for enforcing this sit-at-home order. They have said that countless times that, you know, they no longer observe the Mondays sit-at-home. I think since from about 2021, sometimes in September or so, where they released a statement suspending the sit-at-home order and all of that. But it has continued, right? And you know, this contradiction that we are seeing, in one breath we hear that IPOB attacks so and so place, and then in another we hear that they are denying some of those happenings. What exactly is happening in your opinion?
It's just because the government is not in power. The government is not executing or using the authority that it's supposed to use. Otherwise, you don't sit in power. You don't be in power. And another group gives order. The order is already working. The order is already effective. Because if it's not effective, they would have come to say, no, we are not the one. So you see, even when, you can understand that when in those days, you see one group will kill, and then the other group will come and tell you, we're not the one that actually killed. Already they have what? They have dominated.
So do you think that perhaps, maybe IPOB is now having factions?
Groups, factions.
And, there seem to be some kind of chaos. They seem to be not in control of their own movement.
There's no way you could have...
Because one group says, we only do sit at home when Nnamdi Kanu is going to be appearing in court. So each time he's going to be appearing in court, we're going to declare a sit at home. So it's not the usual, Monday sit at home. So it's an indication of loss of control, isn't it?
Yes, see, you can have a situation of that magnitude and you expect, a control system from the center. No. Even just if it is two states that you're having such situations, there is no way you will have a control from the center. There must be a divided homes against itself for interest and other reasons.
Only yesterday, or a few days ago, the governor of Anambra State, Chukwuma Soludo, he visited Nnamdi Kanu. The pictures were everywhere. And he said that Nnamdi Kanu is not comfortable with the killings in the region and is also not happy with the sit at home. Now, this IPOB claimed to be acting on his behalf. They claim to be doing it because he's been held. Now, if he's saying this, well, how can this, how do you look at both statements?
You see, one time he denied some of his followers in court. Yes, one time he denied his followers in court. And it gets to show that when a man calls himself a leader, the agitation, yes, has been. But when he calls himself a leader and it cannot control the followers, then he has lost the sense of leadership. Because when you say you are a leader, every other persons are becoming your follower. And your followers should be what? Should be able to accept your views of things, of what you have championed. Because you're the one that brought this. So if you say, this is my vision on this matter, I expect that if you have actually groomed followers, they should believe what you have, you should believe in your vision. But unfortunately, with his contradicting statement to what the governor said, I never heard it from Nnamdi Kanu. If the governor, Charles Soludo, said Nnamdi Kanu is not comfortable with the killings. Nnamdi Kanu as a person has not been opportune to speak to the press as the current state of his mind, what Biafra is all about now. Since his detention and all of that, we've not been able to hear what exactly his views of the IPOB or Biafra is all about now. So, to me, there's a loss of what? Interest. And number two, there's no command structure on the IPOB situation. There's no command structure. And that have certainly given rooms to all sorts of criminality, which soon will become the case of what we are hearing today, the Boko Haram, the banditry, and all of that. That is another way. You see, if you look at what happened with the Niger Delta and all of that, this is how they all started. Agitations and all of that.
So what can the state governors of that region and the Ohaneze Ndigbo, what can these two groups do to handle this? Because these are just a group of people. I don't want to believe that they are big enough to overrun, the states.
You see, in the Southeast, for those that are living there, they want to tell you the truth. I've made contacts when this thing started happening. Each household has a member of the IPOB. Each household have a member as a member.
Every household.
Every household.
How did you come to that
conclusion?
I'm
coming. Just take your visit. Just take a visit there.
I was in the north. I was in the southeast recently.
Okay.
Yes.
And then ask few questions.
But the conclusion that each house,
I'm letting you know because
it's a bit too general if you ask me.
I'm coming. You see, when a situation, because when you are doing analysis, you do your worst case analysis, And then you look at it from that perspective. What if this happened? You see, what if this happened is like, in the Southeast today, what if the government said, let's fight this IPOB? Who are they going to use to fight the IPOB? Who? The police? The police that the son is a member of the IPOB? The soldier, who's the son, is a member of the IPOB? So, now, the informant the IPOB as a group have in the Southeast is like in each household.
So what's the best way out of this now?
The government have the role to play. The community, unfortunately, which they're supposed to use, have a role to play. But then, like I say, it's unfortunate. The community have been blindfolded into the vision or into the belief that we are fighting for a just cause. You understand me? That's why I generalize it there. That if not so, you can see they say sit at home. It's not coming from government. By implication, everybody sits at home. And that means that you concur.
That means you're saying that there's a need for some form of sensitization.
To the people. That's what the government can do, because as it is now, if IPOB gives order today, and the Anambra or Imo State government gives an order today, just generalize it. Who would the people respect?
All right.
Is it IPOB?
Okay, now let's talk about other stories on our papers. The Nation newspaper leads with the story about EFCC arresting the federal government's top accountant over 80 billion naira fraud. You also have other stories. Supreme Court to hear appeal on Section 84, Subsection 12 on Thursday. Silva, Tarlin opt not to resign. You also have Oshun voters can't be bought. Oyetola replies Adeleke. And then federal government blames tax exemption for revenue laws. Also, the pictorial there on the Nation newspaper is showing a protest that held in Ondo, ASU strike protest that held in Ondo, Oyo, and Ogun State. These are some of the stories. Now, this protest is beginning to happen in pockets from the southern part of the country. Where is this taking us? What are your concerns about this ASU strike and the protests that we're seeing now?
Well, the protests it has become a normal, a practice when issues go out of control. Protest is not new. And what led to protests are when people, or groups perceive upward cheats from a particular, person, group, or from the government. So what they are protesting is just to make you understand that they are not comfortable with the situation. Protest is when people are not comfortable or happy with a particular decision or situation. And we all know the ASU strike is becoming a recurrent issue in Nigeria, not just in this government. It's, over the years, becoming a practice.
But don't you think that there are security implications to this protest?
Of course.
Because they could be hijacked.
No, of course. You see, that is not even my fear. The security implications is that, you see, these students have been at home over the months, and you see them protesting now. Some of them have adulterated the standard. So even going back to the classroom now is another sign of insecurity on the part of educational system. Because some of them during these holidays, or not holiday per se, this unfortunate holiday, must have involved in the act of smoking, courtesan, and all of that. So, and drugs, which is now rampant. Taking drugs and learning how to do so many things. Carrying AK-47 to rob. You can't take away all these things from students in higher institutions. So you think they are going back to the classroom to learn again? No. They are just letting you to understand that when this thing continues, we will no longer be doing it like we are doing it to hide. We'll be coming out broad daylight to act, to do what we're supposed to do.
So in your view, what do you think can be done? Because ASU is insisting that there's an agreement, government must fulfill it. Government on its part is saying that we do not have the money to fulfill this agreement. So where's the middle point?
You see, government cannot continue giving us these excuses that there's no money. And for that reason, things should, cripple that. You have someone stealing about 80 billion, allegedly. And you have a political party who can raise almost 20-something billion. Why not negotiate for somehow, a way, a preventative diplomacy, seek for another opportunity, so how you can dialogue with this, because we can understand it is not just from this, it's not about just one government. It has been, a recurrent issue. So you can just look at the situation and say, let us find an alternative to solve the problem. But not all the time. You look at it, you don't respect, agreements, you don't respect anything. You just look at people and said they are nothing. These are people, these are professors you use for elections.
All right. I would like us to take a look at, other stories, particularly about the one about the arrest of the Accountant General of the Federation. To get more details on that, let me just read the story. Operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, arrested serving Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, in connection with diversion of funds and money laundering activities to the tune of 80 billion naira. According to the commission, intelligence showed that the AGF raked off the funds through bogus consultancies and other illegal activities using proxies, family members, and also close associates. The funds were reportedly laundered through real estate investments in Kano and Abuja. Idris was said to have been arrested after failing to honor invitations by the EFCC to respond to issues connected to the fraudulent acts. We'll take perspectives on our General Editor Abdulaziz Deputy General Editor Abdulaziz is joining us to give us also some perspectives to this. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak, Abdulaziz.
Thank you, Ayuba, and good morning, listeners and viewers.
All right. Well, to get your own, perspectives on this, this story is coming as a shock to many people. The serving Accountant General, and if you look at the amount of money that he's been accused of laundering, that's quite huge, isn't it?
Yeah. So as you said, Ayuba, it came really as a surprise to a lot of people that a senior government official like the Accountant General could be not only invited but also arrested in this circumstance. But also a lot of people are saying that this is not really shocking as such, because as some people familiar with some of the things happening in that office say, it's actually, even before the coming of Idris, it's a place that a lot of shoddy deals are allegedly perpetrated by occupiers of the office, because of how central and important it is to the running of government business. But also, in this particular case, it is quite shocking, because for Buhari's government especially, which comes on the back of fighting corruption and allegations that the previous administration of the PDP had plundered the Nigerians' commonwealth, and that the government is coming to correct the wrongs and all that. And mark you that Ahmed Idris is perhaps the first most significant appointee of the Buhari government, because he was appointed in June, just like a month, even less than a month after Buhari himself was sworn in as president. And then his tenure was also renewed after the 2019 election, despite protests, because there were people saying that as a civil servant, he was due to retire when he attained the age of 60 in the year 2020, in November of that year. But he, I think, argued, and of course, perhaps the government agreed with his argument, that he was occupying the office as a political appointee, not as civil servant. It's some sort of abracadabra. But this magnitude of haste to say that this much amount of money is stretched to one person is quite alarming, and a huge dent on the government's anti-corruption mantra.
Abdulaziz, Ahmed Idris has been in office since 2015, and the EFCC is coming up with this now. This will be 7 years down the line. Do you have any information on how long this investigation has been ongoing before they came up with this now?
So no one, investigation like this, sometimes you can't for sure say for how long, and I have not been able to get the information about the duration it took for them to gather evidence and arrive at this conclusion. But it is evident that it is something that has taken perhaps a lot of time, but also as one Facebook user wrote last night, and there were so much, because some people are complaining, or especially lawyers are talking about this being another media trial. But one user commented that there have been a lot of evidence in the court of public opinion to arrive at the EFCC is now saying, because there are so many properties in places, especially in Kano, where Idris comes from, linked to the man, which are allegedly owned in so many places in Kano. There is this huge market outside the state capital. There are at least 2 other residential areas where properties are allegedly linked to him, which are presently displayed. So all those things, I think, are too glaring and very easy to find. It was not. It are not things that were in hiding.
Okay,
so
Abdulaziz, we cannot blame those who say, well, perhaps this is just another media trial, because we've seen similar instances in the past, isn't it? When, if the president can renew an appointment of such a person beyond even, his retirement age, like it has been argued, I mean, what makes you think, or what guarantee, what assurance that Nigerians even have that?
People raising around about the possibility of this being, or the danger of media trial, especially in a case like this. I also hold the belief that from the courts, not actually from press releases of EFCC, because these are the details. Because by this statement, if you read the EFCC statement as you just read now in the program, you can see that it is more of a conviction.
Your account is low. Please recharge as soon as possible, or dial.
Well, we will be continuing the discussion shortly after this breather. Please stay with us. thank you for staying with us. We are still here with Jonathan Onoja in the studio, and of course we had, the perspective from one of us, the Deputy General Editor Abdulaziz, who was also giving his own thoughts about the recent happening, the arrest of the Accountant General of the Federation. Now let's hear from you as well. Your own thoughts around this particular story, the arrest of the Accountant General.
Honestly, we must change the narratives, because so many people believe it's just the usual media trial. If I begin to ask questions today, we will not get out of here. What happened? Is it the first time? What happened to the Secretary of the Government? What is this level of trial today? So when the government says we're fighting corruption, and this fight against corruption is like one-sided and like the eye of the eagle on the EFCC flag itself, then there's no just cause, in that line. We talked about corruption in government. We've not been able to, dig deep about government officials who have looted money that Mr. President is aware. I am saying Mr. President is aware because they are in his cabinet. Nigerians are saying, no, this is becoming so much, this is becoming too much. The last time we said this happened was when the Secretary to the Government was suspended. And
the then Secretary to the Government.
He said, who is presidency? He came out bold to tell you, people, media, and said, who is presidency? So you can see that, that level of confidence, that even when they do evil, they are not showing any kind of, remorse over what they have done. They feel that it is their right to do that. And nothing is truly happening. Nothing is truly happening. With the other time we said the former EFCC chairman was involved in this and that. What is the level of the trial? And Nigerians are asking questions, and we're not getting, to the root of the matter. We use 1 year to fight, 5 years, 6 years to fight this case now. You will see it. And at the end of the day, nothing will happen.
But and even the ones that we've secured convictions, we end up releasing them, isn't it?
That is the level.
So presidential pardon.
Presidential pardon. No. I could have swear done that and seek for presidential pardon. So when there's no deterrent, you are very convinced. You are convinced that there's going to be what presidential pardon. Why not you do it more?
But in this instance, the EFCC appears to have done a thorough job. I mean, with everything they said yesterday.
There's thorough job always.
Aren't you hopeful that this will get to a conclusion? We'll see a conclusion in this matter.
You're just waiting to get the words from me, right? I am telling you that I am very, very sure His Excellency is aware, even before it gets to the tune of 5 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion. He is aware. Because the money is not just disappearing from the Federation account without anything. There must be something that they're using this money for, and there is no, there is no follow-up as to know exactly what they're using the money for. So that is to show that, by implication, His Excellency is aware.
Well, to take on somebody as big as the Accountant General, you have to be sure that you have all your facts. So the EFCC could not have just gone and said, okay, you're under arrest. They needed to have something. But maybe that was why it took this long.
The Federation account is not managed by the Accountant General, so-called now. The Federation account is linked to, even the president knows exactly what is there. So if you give an agency 100 billion, you must know exactly what they are using the 100 billion for. So this particular 80 billion we are hearing, how did it fly out of the Federation account unaccounted for? That shows that some levels of
issuing of contracts, consultancies, by proxy.
That is to let you know that there are no follow-up when it comes to execution of contract, and that is the worst corruption in government. That is to show that the government is weak. You cannot give me, you cannot be at the villa there and, say Daily Trust construction, what 2 billion. And then there's no one day I come here to come and do what? To come and visit Daily Trust construction that is I've approved, 2 billion. There is no follow-up, there is no consistency, and that shows that the government is weak. That's the truth, that's the implication.
But now that this has happened, what do you hope to see?
Well, to me, when corruption becomes too many, I don't see any other thing again as compromise. The case of competency compromise, and the minus of consequences. The man could be good in his job, could be good at his job, very good. He could be a very good chartered accountant, he can do the job, he can do this, he could be a professor, it could be that. Now that is what we're talking about, proficiency, competency. He's very competent. The one you now compromise, he has compromised. That is the implication of the 3 C's. He has compromised. Then what should be given to him? There should be consequences. Then the question Nigerians have been asking since 2015 is that where are the consequences in the sea? There is no consequences. So we are not even expecting consequences in this.
Well, let's hope that at the end of the day, the law takes its course, because yes, he's still a suspect, from what we are hearing, and hopefully it's not just yet another media trial, and that the EFCC have all the evidences to actually prove this in court, because it's one thing to make this arrest and it's another to actually secure a conviction as far as this is concerned. Let's talk about other political issues. INEC, is insisting on its timelines. Political parties are pleading for extensions. Now, if you take a look at the lead story on the Punch newspaper, it says, timetable, INEC talks 12 as 18 parties fail to conduct primaries. It is insisting that no going back on election timetable. June 3rd deadline is sacrosanct. APC others intensify lobbying as commission says terminal date for primaries is fixed. And then you see also PDP postpones governorship and Senate primaries for the 3rd time. It is citing IPOB's sit-at-home order. Is that enough? Is that?
We've been having, Boko Haram, terrorism, and all of that. They conducted primaries, before the 2015 election, right? There is no amount of insecurity. Although insecurity is a very, a big factor that would affect the electoral situation or the elections in 2023. No doubt about it. But we've not even gone to 2023. You're giving us excuses why you cannot hold just party primaries.
Do you think that perhaps maybe the political parties and some government appointees feel that they will be able to
get an extension?
Yeah, either get an extension or get a kind of an injunction in court that would jettison or put aside, that, provision of
that means you're going to alter the INEC Act. The INEC has a mandate. And you're taking them to court for an institution of government that said this is what we want. And the political parties decide. INEC is constitutionally backed up. I hope you understand it. INEC is constitutionally backed up. It's a frame set up by the constitution of government. But then, these are political parties that emerge as a result of one thing or the other that can even be deregistered tomorrow. Can INEC be deregistered from anything by court? No. So INEC is an institution of government that must be respected, and their decision must be respected. So when you see the selfish games of politicians taking over them, all because they want to have a consensus over a particular candidate, and the candidates that have not yet emerged, they will take time. You see what happened when it was time for example, the APC convention before the Adamu came up as the chairman. You see, unopposed. They are looking at the body language of Mr. President. Has Mr. President spoken? Or what is he going to say this time around? So the more he keep quiet, the more they get confused. So they need to seek for him to speak like a god who has to speak first before the decision of the people must be made.
Another concern a lot of people are raising is the fact that the 2 major parties have fixed their primaries for 28th of May and 30th, 31st. And some people are saying that it's coming too close to the deadline, and that could affect the quality of the convention that they'll have, and at the end, even the quality of the candidate that may be presented to the public.
Did they even have any quality when it comes to primary elections in Nigeria? What are the qualities we're looking at? Have we been able to meet up in date, a time frame, and say, let's do this? And when we have that, you see, it's going to be an overnight case. The president has spoken, and then for the PDP, this is the body language of the delegates, and this is what people have said, the stakeholders. So let's go with this. So not until this moves, you see, in the adjoining this, until you see maybe somebody come up and say, no, it's this candidate. I don't want to mention a particular candidate. It is this candidate, and the queue behind him, everybody will go. Then when you see that Mr. President comes and said, hey, this is the man we want, convention will hold immediately. Primaries will begin to hold overnight. So they are looking at the body language of the words of the president and the stakeholders of different political parties before primaries can hold. Primaries can be slated on the paper now. As you and I speak, if the president just give a body language now, primaries can hold tomorrow. That is the way the political system is working. And INEC must say no to it, because if they continue to do that, then there is no internal democracy.
All right. Okay. Well, we've talked about quite a lot on this segment. It's time for us to end it. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak at this moment and for sharing your perspectives with us on some of these stories.
Thank you.
We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, my dear. It's my pleasure.
Yes, we've been speaking with Jonathan Onoja. He's a security analyst and also public affairs commentator. With that, we'll take a look at this story now. Amidst tension in Sokoto State over the killing of a student of Shehu Shagari College of Education for blasphemy, the Gombe State Police Command has held an emergency meeting with stakeholders talking about Islamic and Christian clerics to strengthen the peace. The meeting, which took place on Monday at the police headquarters, had representatives of Muslim and Christian communities in Gombe State. Let's take a look.
The State Commissioner of Police said the meeting was to strengthen understanding and sustain peace between Muslims and Christians in Gombe State. The Commissioner also commended the effort of Islamic and Christian clerics in preaching peace to their subjects and asked them to collaborate with the police to maintain law and order.
Please, I want the religious leader, the preaching that will come out of it, let the preach of peace. Is that okay? Let the preaching that will bring unity. Let it be the preach that will bring togetherness. Because we all want to know, no matter what this is, whether a Muslim or Christian, let leave the remaining one to God. Let the Christian religion leader make the list, whatever that one, there shall be peace. Let the Muslim leader make whatever that is, let them be religion of peace.
The representatives of Jamaatul Nasrul Islam, JNI, and the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, vow to maintain peace among their followers.
I believe all the religious leaders, they are after peace. All of them, including the Muslims and the Christians. And I believe we are going to take action where we continue our interfaith meeting so that peace will continue permanently in Gombe State.
If there is peace, we are the direct beneficiaries of that peace. And if we are the beneficiaries of that peace, we ought to protect that peace by living in peace with one another.
Gombe is believed to be one of the most peaceful states in the country. Stakeholders say it is important for all to work towards maintaining that status quo. From Gombe, Ibrahim Ismail reporting for Trust TV.
All right, thank you for staying. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now, going into our next discussion on the program, according to experts, the rising cost of production and doing business in Nigeria can be attributed to the epileptic power supply in the country, which can be blamed on poor policies, corruption, dilapidated power infrastructure, among others. In the recent times ranking of countries with the most stable power supply in Africa by WEF Electricity Access, Africa Facts, Nigeria failed to make the top 10 mark, with countries like Mauritius and Tunisia ranking first and second with 100% electricity supply. This has led to businesses in the country seeking alternative means of power generation and supply, which has also led to inflation. Small and medium enterprises in the country have also been looking towards the use of renewable energy, especially solar energy, as a means to address downtimes in their businesses caused by lack of frequent power supply. On the show this morning, we will be looking at renewable energy and how it could serve as an alternative to fixing Nigeria's electricity problem, which has been lingering for decades. Joining us this morning to talk about this is Dr. Toby Oluwatola, the Acting Executive Director of the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, formerly known as the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. Dr. Toby is also an energy and development expert. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you very much, Ayuba.
You're welcome. All right, and let's begin with a look at Nigeria's power problem. In recent times, it seemed to have degenerated. I think it was last month we've seen that the national grid collapsed almost 3 times or so, and a lot of people are really concerned as to how this affects production and the economy generally. Let's have your own assessment.
Thank you very much, Ayuba, and thank you, Stella, for having me on the show. So, electricity in Nigeria has, at this point, become a perennial problem. And the thrust of the problem is that, at this point, for our growing population, first of all, we don't generate enough for our growing population, but we generate nearly enough. If you think about how much power is generated in captive sources in your home and my home, the truth is that we probably generate enough. On the grid alone, we've got anywhere around 15 gigawatts of electricity being generated. But the big challenge has always been, and currently is, wheeling that power from where it is generated to where it is most needed. And right now, the Transmission Company of Nigeria handles the transmission side of things, and the private distributors who got concessioned and bought 60% equity in the discos, 11 of them, then transmit to the final consumer. And the real bottleneck is that gap, because that space, because the transmission grid only has a capacity of about 5,000 megawatts thereabout, and then the distribution network somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts. So there's a bottleneck in that space.
So when you see that, don't you think that it's kind of too generous of you to say that we are actually generating, enough? In your own earlier
and what needs to happen is to figure out how we then take what we generate to where it is needed. The thing with power is that when you generate power, you have to use it in that instant that you generate it. Power can, except you are able to store it in batteries. Otherwise, power has to be used the instant it's generated.
And we have had instances where power is generated, but the companies do not take it to distribute. We have had that kind of instance. Why is that?
It's a good question. It's the same problem that we talked about, the fact that many times that infrastructure that is supposed to move the power from one point to another fails. So you have cases where, and what also tends to happen, and this is why the grid collapses from time to time, is that because power, when it's generated, has to be used instantaneously, when that power is generated and it flows in the direction of least resistance. Wherever there's no resistance, the power will flow there. But what then happens is that if you then have places that power is supposed to go to, and then for some reason the line that is supposed to take the power there is broken, then that power gets stuck and it burns things elsewhere. So the generator has to then turn off the generator. When it turns off the generator, it leads to frequency problems on the system, and that's usually what leads to those collapses. So what many companies, the discos do many times, is to then say, don't send me power, because right now I don't have the capacity to move everything to where it needs to go. Where renewables come in is, so first of all, we have to clean up the grid. We have to expand the grid. We have to fix the parts that are dilapidated and old on the grid. We have to get the grid to get to many places where it doesn't get to today.
I need to ask one question.
Okay.
We had an energy expert on this show not too long ago, and he said that the reason we're having all the power problems we're having is because when the dams were constructed in 1950 something, before before Nigeria even got its independence, that it didn't take into consideration the population that was going to come later, and that the capacity, or that the way it was built, that the construction at that time had a problem. And I'm asking, is that really why we're having power problem in Nigeria?
No, that's not true. That's not true. Dams generate electricity the same way they've generated electricity for the last 100 years.
But here's the thing, yeah, with respect to that, what she said, before you proceed, look at it in the context of the fact that we have a national grid as a country, right? And some of the experts, have kicked against the fact that why should Nigeria as a country, with the kind of landmass we have a national grid where everybody is now, connected to.
Yes.
They've talked about unbundling this and
Yes.
making it maybe more on a regional scale that will enable the distribution a lot more easier.
To be easier.
Take it from that angle.
No, that's an excellent question, because if you think about places where the electricity grids work well, so I'll just use the US for example. The US has what they call regional transmission organizations and independent system operators. So California has its own ISO, California Independent System Operator. The Maryland, DC area has PJM. So everybody has theirs. The UK has what they call the national grid, but the national grid is divided into zones. And what tends to happen is that when there are transmission constraints, what tends to happen is that you then have prices go up in the places where the electricity that allows the electricity flow in the direction of where the prices have gone up, and generators who generate electricity, more electricity in the places where the prices have gone up make more money. So the summary is that we've said that I wanted to correct the notion that the hydro dams are faulty. Yes, from time to time they have broken turbines, but for the most part, they still generate electricity quite adequately. Nigeria today is even more of a gas generator than an hydro generator. EGMI generates the largest, and then coming from Niger Delta, we have quite a few generators that generate. The problem is then moving the electricity up north and towards the southwest, where a lot of it is consumed. So it's really a transmission problem. And the way you could solve that problem is to really generate electricity. Rather than deal with the transmission constraint of moving electricity up the grid, you can generate electricity closer to where it is needed and will it much cheaper to the places where it needs to be utilized.
Okay, so how does renewable energy comes into the picture and to salvage the situation? How can we make the most of it? How can we take advantage of it? You said that we are more of a gas generating,
Yes.
country in terms of power. Now, we have, abundance in terms of certain things. Sunlight, for instance, in certain northern part of the country is there. You could feel, if you go to Borno now or you go to Adamawa now, you don't need. It's almost like you've moved out of the earth, to closer to the sun and all. So, how best can we take advantage of some of this, to translate into power?
Yeah, northern Nigeria has some of the best direct irradiation in the world. So we do have a potential. And what's even more interesting, and I think a lot of people haven't realized this, is that the price of solar panels, since I started working in the sector, has dropped more than 80% in about 10 years.
Why is that?
80%. Because there is,
because I know a lot of people are now buying into that. So why is the price dropping?
The first answer is China. China put in with their SunTrust program, put in a lot of money into the solar value chain. And the truth is, the process for creating the silicon cells has improved a lot, and we've learned a lot of how to make it more efficiently, so the prices are coming down. So the prices will likely come down a little more. Because there's now technology around how you make thin film solar that allows you create more batches of panels with one rule than we currently have. So the prices will come down by another factor of about maybe another 60% or so in the near term. The batteries of panel, the prices of batteries are also coming down, particularly the lithium-ion batteries. And as you do that more at scale, as we have more batteries being produced, that will also come down. The way the solar renewable energy is really able to solve the problem is that because it's decentralized, you can have more easily create modular systems. So I could have, and one of the things...
Before you go for that, I just want to know, can renewable energy replace the power that we need as a country?
You just have to have enough panels. So
because I know that a lot of countries a lot of countries where this renewable energy is used, just about 5% of the population are using it because they still depend on this power. So is Nigeria's case going to be different?
So you do have to have base load because the truth is renewable energies are intermittent. So the sun doesn't shine at night.
Exactly.
So you have to have base load, which many countries generate with either gas or nuclear or what have you, that gives you that base power. But the benefit of renewable energies is the opportunity to have them be decentralized. And there's a misconception that you can't power heavy machinery with solar. That's a wrong conception. You can power anything with solar. You just have to have enough panels.
Oh.
But oftentimes people have rather small roofs. They don't want to spend so much, so they don't put enough
because
panels.
I've always heard, okay, with solar you can't connect this, you can't connect that.
You can. It's just a question of how large your system is. But to be cost efficient, so when we advise clients, because I also run a renewable energy company, when we advise clients, we tell them you don't necessarily have to run 5 ACs. You can put one AC on the system. If you have to put an AC on the system, when there's no grid power, you can just use your fan, so that you can bring your costs down. And what many people don't also think about is when you think about because the thing that really stresses people out when they think about the cost of renewable energy is that it's an upfront cost, unlike your diesel generator or your fuel generator that you go buy fuel every week. This you make an upfront cost, and it's a cost that lasts you for the panels last you for 25 years.
Yeah, but you have to also consider that there's a cost for maintenance, isn't it? From time to time, you may need to run some kind of maintenance on the batteries or whatever.
Or to even change the batteries. There are times you need to change the batteries.
If you're using lead-acid batteries, you may need to change them between 2 and 5 years. If you're using lithium-ion batteries, you need to change them between 7 and 10 years. So even if you consider that amount of time that you have a system that just works for 7 years, the fuel you would have bought within that 7 years, you would have paid back that money in 2 years.
Again, another issue is whether or not we have enough skilled, manpower, like the technical know-how to actually manage some of these things. Because the experience of some people is that, you have people who come, take your money, say, okay, they are doing this fixing, and then at the end of the day, it doesn't work. So is there a gap there?
There is certainly a gap there. And that's the one gap that a lot of players in the sector are trying to fill right now. There's lots of solar academies across the country. Lagos has an energy academy. Here, REA has all sorts of programs that train young people, women, and co in solar technology, because there is a skill gap there and there is a knowledge gap there. And even after the system has been built, people who build system also need to educate the client on how to when there are basic, because many times what happens is a fuse just trips to protect your system, and people just get confused and what's going on. And all you have to do is very simple fixes that if there was an education gap closed, that problem would be solved.
Dr. Toby, one of the problems that we have in Nigeria that affects small businesses is power. So if I were a small business owner,
yes,
how do I key into this? And would it be profitable to me?
Yeah. So the short answer to your question is yes. If you're a small business owner, you should key into this because it will save you money in the long run. That's the short answer.
How? Because you also mentioned that it's a lot of investment at the initial point. If I were a small business owner and I do not have that kind of money, what do I do?
A lot of the companies now, the good solar companies now, provide you with debt, with a lease-to-own system, where you pay a small upfront fee and they spread the rest of the fee for you over 2 years. So a lot of the companies now provide that. So you can look out for companies, and they're all over the internet. You can look out for companies that provide that.
Okay.
And I also have to add this, that there is a program that the REA has called the Nigeria Electrification Program, which is perhaps the only thing that, again, I don't want to be disparaging of government, but it's one thing that they're doing well. where they give a grant to companies to go help build rural mini-grids using solar. And there are lots of companies who have been pre-qualified to do this, and part of the pre-qualification is an assessment that they can do it well.
Okay, now let's talk about, having some of these installations on a large scale.
Yes.
We probably have talked more about having them,
Yes.
in bits and pieces,
and
and here and there. How is it possible for us to have large corporations invest heavily in this regard, in the renewable energy, such that they can actually provide power to people, to communities and all of that?
Your question is, it hits me at a very special place, because I think that eventually, for the scale of the problem that we have, distributed systems are not going to be enough. We need to build larger solar farms. And right now, there are 14 projects that had signed PPAs with the government of Nigeria, but because they couldn't get the financing they needed, because for some reason they couldn't get the guarantees, the bank financiers couldn't get the guarantees they needed to guarantee that they will buy the power from them consistently, those projects are moribund. But what is beginning to happen is that private actors are now beginning to say, okay, I own a DISCO. Within my DISCO network, I can sign up 100 customers that will commit to buying power from this renewable energy company for the next 20 years. So banks will get a bank to give a guarantee so that you can build a 200 megawatt system that can serve, close to 1 million people consistently for 25 years. And those types of arrangements are starting to surface. The confidence is still not there, to be honest.
Now, can you guarantee that this can actually, because what we need in terms of solving our production problem is power for industrialization.
Absolutely.
Can you guarantee that when we have such, it can actually, take care of this?
First of all, nobody can guarantee anything in the world, but there's a high level of confidence that it will significantly ameliorate the problem. And but what you also need, I also have to add this just for completeness, is as you're adding that level of intermittent power to the grid, you've also got to add some storage so that you can create what they call resilience. There are times when you're generating excess power, the excess power goes into the storage. And when you're not generating enough, the storage releases it. So you've got to also add resilience to make sure that it can guarantee to a very high level of confidence that we
Okay, do you think that there's a problem with maybe the legal framework in terms of alternative source of power generation in Nigeria? Do you believe, or because I've heard, certain people say that, look, that we have a problem with, certain legal frameworks as to power generation in the various regions and all of that. So do you consider that as a problem?
Certainly. That has been a problem historically. And the rule is that if you're generating more than 1 megawatt, you have to get a generation license, and if you're generating, close to 20 megawatts, you've got to put it on the grid and whatnot. So there is a limitation in that space, but I see a lot of legislative advocacy to sort of soften that, but that then needs to translate to NLC regulation.
Is there any bill or anything before the legislators at the moment to that effect?
I will be very honest. I'm not up to date on that. I heard rumors that there was one, but I'm not up to date on it. But even if there was and it was passed, it hasn't trickled down to the regulator, which is where it really matters.
All right. Now, there's also the politics of power. We cannot overrule that. Right now, as it stands, it appears that there's some kind of monopoly, in Nigeria's power generation and distribution for whatever reason. Of course, for interest, for personal interest. So, in that regard, do you think that we can actually break away from this to be able to actually provide power for Nigerians as they should have it?
I think that where the monopoly is at this. So first of all, you cannot run away from monopoly where power is concerned. That's the first thing to be clear about, because it's what they call power, just like water, just like telecommunications, is what you call in economics a natural monopoly. Because the reason why it's a natural monopoly is because you can't have 10 different people building power lines that come to your house and come to my house. It will create chaos. So you can only have one company build power lines that go to everybody's houses, and then everybody pays something to use those lines.
But isn't that monopoly dangerous for the populace?
And that's the role of regulators. That's the role of regulators. So regulators then come in and say, okay, so we've built these lines. These are the rules that will guide competition in the utilization of the lines. You, the DISCO, we've sold this mini grid, this region to you, but you cannot if you will not serve the people, if there are still underserved people within your jurisdiction, you have to create space for other people to come and serve those people. And what we found in Nigeria is that many times the DISCOs have used, very aggressive competition tactics to really stifle competition within the monopolies that they control. And this is where the regulator has to play a firmer role in ensuring that even though there are these natural monopolies that have been generated, you've got to still create competition to make sure that people get served properly. For example, there was the issue in Ikoyi where I think the residents of, Banana Island wanted to go sign a PPA with a private generator to help them make sure they have reliable power. But then after the investor had spent some money, EcoDisco then comes and says, we'll offer a much better rate and give you reliable power. And that gentleman who had spent money is then stranded because he also hadn't had very firm contracts at the time. So that's one area where the regulator definitely needs to play a firmer role. And we have what they call interconnected mini-grids now that is a regulation that allows for these things to happen. But to build an interconnected mini-grid today, you have to work hand in hand with the DISCO, who sometimes are not cooperative.
Okay, when the whole concept of privatization in the power sector came, a lot of Nigerians were optimistic that, this is the game changer. We are now going to have power supply stable and all that. But to the disappointment of many till date, we're here. This is where we are till now. So when that idea came, people were expecting, we are going to see the kind of privatization that happened in the telecommunication sector. Like we have, the networks, all the networks that we have today. Is there a chance at any point that we are likely going to see that happen in the power sector?
I think that there is a chance, and I think that it will happen. So also we have what we call the willing buyer, willing seller regulation, enable and eligible customer regulation that allows individual companies and individual estates to say, okay, we want to go sign a contract with another private entity to give us power. So that has worked in many estates, as you would see, residential estates. If you live in an estate, you see many estates have reliable power because they're able to use that regulation to their advantage. And it's going to be so first of all, two things need to happen. Number one, we've got to really invest in fixing the transmission infrastructure. When Abba Kyari was alive, there was a negotiation with Siemens that was
when he traveled to Germany.
Yeah, when he traveled to Germany, that was going to see that happen in some way. So that still needs to happen, fixing the transmission grid. But also, there's got to be more room for competition within the DISCO networks.
Are you saying we need more DISCOs?
No. Okay. What we need is more. So we need more responsible DISCos in some cases. But in other cases where, you know, we don't have, and that's also the role of regulator to some degree, to be a little firmer with the discos. There are discos who use all sorts of underhanded techniques. They won't give you a meter, and they charge you estimated bills that bear no correlation with reality. With reality. So we've got to have more responsible discos.
Okay, now aside the, you know, we've talked about solar power, of course, solar energy. What other options, you know, of sources of energy do we have in Nigeria that we can actually take advantage of, you know, to provide access to power? We talk about hydroelectric, of course. That too, we've seen that there have been projects.
Yeah.
Some of them have been merely on the front pages of newspapers, and that's all. You know, so what other, you know, sources of energy can we actually harness here in Nigeria?
So good question. So so definitely Nigeria is a very viable wind destination as well. At this point, it's not as cheap as solar, but it's equally viable. So wind is a good alternative. In many cases, we could, even though biomass and ability to convert waste to energy is still expensive, it is definitely something that on smaller scales could work. Another technology that could work, and again still in the area of biomass, is biogas, where you have a farm that generates a lot of agricultural waste. You can convert some of that agricultural waste, so say like rice husk, or the corn hobs and whatnot.
Okay, how about the acceptability? Do you think that Nigerians have come to that awareness of, you know, accepting these other means of energy?
It's
like,
all about,
you know,
I think
like
Nigerians
really
are reasonable people.
them?
Especially in the rural areas. Are they aware of this, and do they know how they can key into this?
So Nigerians are practical people. If there is a solution that is practical and there's a service, a company that is able to serve them, Nigerians will buy into it.
Affordable.
And there are many, and it's affordable. Exactly. So, and there are many mini grid companies today that are serving the rural areas, because ultimately, when you think about it, even if they're charging you 120 naira or 150 naira per kilowatt hour, it's still cheaper than you having to go take a bike to wherever you can buy fuel for your gen, or use candle, or use wood. It's still cheaper for those people, and they pay, you know, even in the rural areas. So ultimately, it comes down to, do we have, are we creating environments where companies who want to invest can invest in a way that is safe, and they can make their returns.
So in your view, how long is it going to take before renewable energy will be able to bridge the gap, the energy gap?
In my view, I would want it to happen this year, but I'm also being realistic.
Realistically,
I know that it won't happen this year. I think that inevitably, within the next, so I think one thing that will have to change, another thing that needs to happen is that the grid needs to be smarter, and we need regulation around what they call net metering. What is net metering? Net metering is when I'm generating power in my house, say with my solar energy, and I can sell that power back to the grid when I'm not using it. So we're both here now, there's solar in my roof that is generating electricity. If it can be selling power to the grid so that the grid can sell to someone else while I'm not using it, that's a regulation that we need to pass immediately, and we need a grid that is smart enough to do it. Because what will also happen is that when electric cars now come, these cars come with 100 kilowatt hour batteries under them. These cars can power your house for 4 days, 5 days. You know, so when those cars come, which is inevitable, those
while
cars
you're
are
still
coming,
using the cars, they'll be powering your house.
While you're not using the cars, they can be powering your house or someone else's house.
Okay, that's interesting.
So these things will be solved, but there needs to be regulation, which is net metering type regulation, but also there needs to be smart metering, smart systems on the grid, which many people,
Are stakeholders working towards getting that regulation?
There is some effort towards it, but I would say many of the efforts tend to be tepid, you know, and it's not as aggressive or going as quickly as it should.
All right. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on Daybreak this morning and sharing with us
Thank you for having me.
this information. Yeah, we appreciate you. We've been speaking with Dr. Toby Oluwatola, and he's the Acting Executive Director of the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development, formerly known as the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. He's also an energy and development expert joining us this morning. We'll take a short breather now, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at our next discussion on the program. Please stay. All right, thank you for staying. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. Going into the next discussion on the program, the Securities and Exchange Commission has released new rules for digital assets as part of its efforts to regulate digital virtual assets such as bitcoins and NFTs. This is contained in a recently released document titled New Rules on Issuance, Offering Platforms and Custody of Digital Assets, essentially legalizing digital assets such as cryptocurrencies in Nigeria. The development is coming more than a year after the Commission issued the classification and treatment of digital assets. According to the regulation, digital asset actors include digital asset offering platforms, digital asset custodians, virtual assets service providers, and digital assets exchange. The rules apply to all platforms that support the trading, exchange, and transfer of virtual assets, all issuers and sponsors of virtual digital assets, including international and non-residential issuers and sponsors, and any operator that aggressively targets Nigerian investors. Although in 2020, the Central Bank of Nigeria directed financial service providers to hold cryptocurrencies transactions, the new SEC regulation mandates the registration of the offering and sale of digital tokens that are considered securities. Now, to talk about this, we have joining us in the studio cryptocurrency expert Japheth Johnson, as well as foreign exchange and business development expert Emmanuel Okwara, to talk about this. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this week.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, when we saw this new regulation by SEC, it looked like an endorsement of cryptocurrency in Nigeria, and that's also a conflict with the position of the central bank. What's your take on this?
All right, so thank you very much for having me on this show. I was here, I think, last 2 weeks to talk about digital assets and what it means. And we're having regulations now coming up. So I think Nigerians were just waking up to the real fact of what's happening with the financial sector. But in everything, I think I'll just pull us back to talk about figures a little bit to understand why we are coming into this. In 2020 to 2021, Nigeria did over $2.4 billion in volume. And only about 500 million was done with the local exchange here in Nigeria. That means over 80% to 90% of those transactions were done with foreign companies. Now, it's really a thing of concern to know that, okay, most of those funds were not actually being taxable because those companies were not registered.
Was it because of the CBN position?
No, even before that, because they have better services, they have stronger platforms, they have well-known presence. So a lot of Nigerians know more about them than the local exchanges. And it's a thing of concern for Nigeria to be #1 in the world, but most of these transactions are done with the foreign companies. So you see, it's like you have the fuel, but it's being used by another country outside there. So the ban caused a lot of trouble for the local exchanges, one, but it increased peer-to-peer. So we're having more of Nigerians knowing more about crypto after the ban. It surged over 16%. And as of then, we were doing $9.5 million every week in volume. So if the government is not going to get a lot from it, that means it's going to be a lot of chaos. No, we should not do crypto, but Nigeria are finding other means to do crypto with these foreign companies. So this is just a wake-up call for us, and there's a lot to it.
Okay. Now to you, do you see a conflict here? You know, because the central bank has a different position from this one.
Thank you very much. I see a very big conflict because, yes, regulation is good because it helps to reduce financial fraud and it restores investors' confidence. But the problem here is CBN placed a ban, SEC has regulated. Now, transactions, most of them, peer-to-peer, as he said, has to go through the bank. Banks will listen to CBN because there were penalties charged to some banks that did some crypto transactions. Now, if I'm a CEO of a bank and I've just paid a fine for this transaction, and then I haven't heard a press conference from CBN in support of SEC. Definitely, there's going to be a problem because, for me, the ban still stands. So I think that the conflict here is that SEC has rolled out a regulation, which is quite good in a way, but CBN has also come out to align with SEC. If not, the fear and the panic is still going to be there. And most of these transactions are going to be made through the bank. It's still going to be a problem. We're still going to continue with the old ways of peer-to-peer, making it unknown, without even writing, displaying crypto. So that's a problem. If there's a regulation, the two parties have to be in agreement. It has to be made public for me. So that's why I think that there's going to be a little conflict, unless that is rectified.
All right. Now, in terms of implication of this on the stock market, give us an idea of how this is going to have an impact.
Well, how it's going to have an impact is this. The truth is the announcement of the regulation alone can be a boost to our stock markets, a lot of companies, because a lot of companies will want to actually toe the same lane by making transactions in Bitcoin, even if they've been longing to do that, but because of the ban, they can actually do that. So this actually makes it more easier for transactions to take place, which is going to be like a boost. But right now, even if there's a boost in the stock markets, maybe a bullish trend in the stock market, it's not going to trend for a long time because the fear is still there, and fear is not good for the market. What is the fear? The Apex Bank has still not aligned or said anything about it. So yes, the news is going to be a boost in the market, but I can tell you,
but in reality,
it's not going to last because both parties have not really agreed. What really moves all these markets is news, fundamental analysis, news.
Because I remember that the CBN ban, it spoke directly to commercial banks, that they were not to deal in it. So despite this regulation, would the commercial banks are not going to shift, no?
They would not, because let's be honest, who would the banks listen to? Is it SEC or CBN? It's CBN. And SEC has made this statement, but they need a statement also from CBN to align with that. If not, if nothing is rolled out to them, nobody wants to actually go in and actually allow these transactions.
Okay, there's this report that says that despite the order by the Central Bank of Nigeria to commercial banks, Nigeria is said to account for the largest volume of cryptocurrency transactions outside of the US. This is according to data from Paxful, a Bitcoin marketplace report. Why is that so?
So that was why I was trying to pull the numbers for us to start with. You understand? We are in a country where a lot of youth are trying to find a means of livelihood. Okay? So, and we're looking for, I talk about investments. So we're looking at investment that will help us get more money quickly. And we're having youths that are in a position that we're always on our phone.
Okay, you said something. Investment that will make people get money quickly. Is that the push?
Now look at, yes, because the volatility of cryptocurrency had made it a little bit faster to multiply your money if you understand the fundamental and technical analysis. You understand? And a lot of this is, a lot of companies are coming into emerging technologies. So it's easier to go into a platform like this to make more funds. And Nigerians are so good with that. So one, we have teeming youth, over 80 million, that are having access to their phones. We have access to information about these exchanges. An average Nigerian knows more about the United States stock exchange companies rather than Nigerian stock exchange companies. You hear more about cryptocurrency, you hear more about PayPal, Apple stock, but you don't even hear about Dangote shares or MTN shares. So an average Nigerian have more information about where to get stock from the US rather than getting stock here in Nigeria.
Okay, so now, but this regulation does not, take away the volatility of the crypto market, does it?
It doesn't.
Right? So in what way do you think that it can, is there anything that is going to add to the confidence of investors to go into the crypto market?
So exactly, regulation is to provide security, because what the SEC is trying to do is we want to ensure every platform where you go to do these exchanges, we are able to secure our users so that if anything happens, there will not be any rug pull, they will not move away with your funds, they have insurance, they have paid up capital with us. So if anything happens with users on those platforms, we'll be able to refund, and we have those people behind the scene to be able to say, you are going to pay for that damage. So that is just major what regulation does. And that allows new players to come into the market knowing that clearly I can integrate this company because they are being regulated. So without regulation, it's just going to be chaos at the end of the day. But the issue is not the regulation, it's how do we do the regulation.
Exactly.
That's what we should be looking
Which
at.
is the next question I'm going to ask. Is it practical? How practical is it
so
to
good.
apply this here?
I was discussing with Mr. Emmanuel here this morning, and a lot of times, why we don't have the Amazons built in Nigeria, why we don't have Google built in Nigeria, is because we showed a lot of this opportunity at the early stage. When you are regulating and you are making it look like it's going to be monopolized because the average Nigerian youth does not have the capacity to pull all these resources together to build the next biggest exchange in the world, then you are allowing the foreign country to be able to come in with their own companies and pay you that money. So you are just selling the rights now, but you have not been able to incubate new, let's say, new young Nigerians that will be able to build a viable product over a period of 10 years. These companies that are coming into Nigeria have been existing for more than 10 to 15 years. They have the funds. They are coming in to pay you the 50 million, the 30 million you are going to charge them. But at the end of the day, remember, you are pulling over 200 million Nigerians to do their transactions.
So how could it have been done differently?
So that's why I was saying, what do we need to do? Create an agency where you have these startups in Nigeria, have banks come to work with them. We'll be able to study this stuff. Okay, we have 10 crypto companies in Nigeria. We have 10 banks. Okay, we are going to ensure that you have accounts with all of these banks, and you'll be able to do transactions while we study, okay, is there profit? Is there loss? How do we get more funds for you? What infrastructure do you need? Do you need light? Do you need internet? In the process of studying that, you are building a conglomerate of cryptocurrency experts in one place, and at the end of the day, we'll have the biggest exchange because currently we have the largest number of people adopting cryptocurrency.
But some people are still worried about it though because of its volatility.
Every stock is volatile, even in the forex is volatile. The currency, naira to dollar.
Cryptocurrency is higher.
So the issue is that everything can be moved based on, as you have said, news. So we have more people talking about cryptocurrency. If we have more people talking about PayPal news, PayPal talking about Google every day, it's going to be volatile because someone will say, no, Google is stealing your data, Google will crash. No, Google is providing you with Alexa, Google stock will go up. But we have more of experts talking about crypto daily, and that's why we see the volatility. Someone will come with good news and someone will come with the bad news.
Okay.
That's just it.
Okay, now I'm concerned about the implication of this on our forex. You mentioned something about exchange. This morning we are saying that the dollar sold about 600 naira in the parallel market. So what's the implication of this, on our foreign exchange?
For me, I don't really see, for now, to be honest, the way the regulation has been done, I don't really see a positive output on this. Because one thing I asked somebody is, was this regulation in favor of who? Nigerians or foreign companies? It's in favor of foreign companies.
How so?
Yes. If you check the criteria to get the permit, 100,000 naira for the form, 300,000 naira for the application form, 30 million naira for registration. And then you have to do a weekly update to SEC, upload SEC. The people that are doing this crypto peer-to-peer are the youths. Most of them don't even, this is like a job to them. They don't have the financial capacity to do this. Now, if you regulate with these huge terms, you just open the door for foreign companies.
Would it be because they want to ensure that only very serious players come into the business?
When the serious players come in, I think that the paramount thing for anything that we want to do is for the interest of Nigerians to benefit from it and to reduce unemployment. I think that they would have done this in a way that it will also benefit these young guys that are doing peer-to-peer. Now, even if you want to put 30 million naira, why don't you roll out grants for the Nigerian players, most of these guys that are doing this, to be able to come in, develop a platform so that these platforms will be used by Nigerians, made and used by Nigerians. But as it stands right now, big crypto companies, the license fee is nothing to them. In fact, this is the amount they use in paying influencers. So you actually open the door for them to come in and they will come in, do transactions. Money is still leaving the country. If money is leaving the country, the economy is affected. So if you check the foreign exchange market, it won't have any positive impact because we are yet not producing anything. We're not even producing human resources, which we should have produced. So what I think that should have been done is this would have been done in a way to encourage and increase a lot of local platforms being done in Nigerians. If we have 80 million youths and we have just 10,000 come up with new crypto platforms with grants given by governments or even loans to be paid back in 10, 15 years, we're going to have so many platforms. There's a regulation on those platforms. There's a limit of transactions that can be done. Imagine 10,000 going away from 80 million. Those 10,000, I'm sure, will create 1,000 jobs. And they will also train a whole lot of persons. But most of these companies coming in, you are still empowering their economy, not our economy.
All right. Well, at this point, we have to end the discussion because of our time. We thank you for joining us on
Thank you very much.
this morning and for having this discussion. We've been speaking with Japhet Johnson, a cryptocurrency expert, and also foreign exchange and business development expert, Emmanuel Okwara, talking to us about the new regulation by the Security and Exchange Commission. With that, we've come to the end of the program for today. Do well to join us again tomorrow for another time on the program. In case you've missed for today, you can always catch up on our YouTube channel and also across all social media platforms. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
Yeah, thank you once again for spending this part of your morning with us. Do well to join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Iaji. Bye.